Chapter 375. Shun Qiu and Shen Xen were at the residence's doors, and seeing the horse carriage leaving, they asked uneasily, "Father, mother and younger sister will be fine, right? I will make a trip to the Ministry of War." Shen Xen turned around. "You stay in the residence. If anything happens, you will be able to provide support." Shen Qiu nodded. In the carriage, Shen Miao's little face was taut, but there were all kinds of guesses in her heart. She didn't feel that she was in any danger. She didn't have anything on her that was worth scheming against. Moreover, she knew better than anyone about the ways of the ladies in the palace. Even if they had a strategy, it wouldn't be so brazen today. The imperial family cared about their reputation the most. If something happened to her in the palace today, the imperial family would be the first to be blamed. If it was the other way around, Shen Miao's gaze was heavy. The females in the palace did not have any relationship with Luo Shuiyan, but they summoned Luo Shuiyan to the palace to speak. Perhaps they wanted to inquire about something from Luo Shuiyan. The drunkard's intention was not wine, but what was it? The Shen family? Or was it Shen Xen? But why would she suddenly pay attention to Shen Xen? Shen Xen had been keeping a low profile in the capital these days and did not have any connection with Fu Xiui like in the last lifetime. Even if the imperial family wanted to suppress the Shen family, they would have to have a good reason to do so. Could it be that there was already a reason for that? Shen Miao was a little confused. Wanting Luo Shuiyan to bring her into the palace should be a warning. If anything were to happen, Shen Miao, her daughter, would not be able to protect her. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that it was possible. Shen Miao could not help but feel a little nervous. There were many things in this lifetime that were different from the previous lifetime, especially the big picture of Ming Qi. She tried her best to avoid and delay the tragedy of the Shen family, but it was inevitable that fate would go wrong. What was it this time? Luo Shuiyan saw that Shen Miao's expression was not good and thought that Shen Miao was afraid and said with heartache, "Jiao Jiao, do not be afraid. It is only entering the palace to talk to the ladyships. It'll be over soon. We'll come back to look at the house then." Shen Miao smiled faintly but was still somewhat absent-minded. When they reached the entrance of the palace, there was already a palace maid who was there to receive them. When she saw both of them, she led them in. On the way, Luo Shuiyan asked the palace maid, who looked like a female official, which consort had invited them. The female official smiled but did not answer, only saying that she would know when she arrived. At this time, in the palace's Radiance Hall, two beautiful women were laughing and chatting in the hall. The woman on the left had her hair combed into a fairy bun and wore a red palace dress embroidered with gold. She was gorgeous, and although she was smiling as she spoke, her eyes were somewhat absent-minded. She was extremely disrespectful to the woman beside her. Although she acted like this, the woman beside her did not get angry. Instead, she replied with a smile. This woman wore an apricot-colored dress with plum blossoms on it. Her appearance was not as outstanding as the woman on the left, but she appeared gentle and polite, and also elegant. These two people were not others but the palace consorts that invited Shen Miao and her daughter to the palace today. The one on the left was Consort Su Xian, and the elegant one on the right was Consort Dong Shu. "It is fine that His Majesty wants us to invite Shen Foreign over, but why also bring the young lady of the Shen family?" Consort Su Xian was somewhat impatient, going for a long time and not coming back. It is really such a big face. The general residence is not a short distance from the palace. Consort Dong Shu smiled. "Jejie, do not be anxious." Consort Su Xianfei laughed. "Mimi, you are used to being a good person." She suddenly thought of something and smiled mischievously. "Speaking of which, that young lady of the Shen family had once admired His Ninth Highness. Could it be that you are very satisfied with her? That's why you protect her like this?" Consort Dong Shu's expression slightly stagnated before she smiled. "Jejie really know how to joke. It is just that, since His Majesty wants both of us to come over, it is better to do proper business. That fifth Shen young lady is only following her mother, and in a while the palace maids will bring her out." Chapter 376. Bringing out Emperor Wen Hui's name. The domineering consort Su Xian could not say anything. Just as she was about to say a few sarcastic words, she suddenly saw her own female official coming in. Consort Su Xian asked, "Arrived?" The female official nodded her head, and in a short while, Luo Shuiyan and Shen Miao walked in. After greeting the two females, Shen Miao followed Luo Shuiyan and stood at the side with her head lowered, not lifting it up. One could only hear a slightly sharp voice, "Shen Furen, this must be your daughter. Lift up your head and let Bengong take a look." Shen Miao paused for a moment and slowly lifted her head up to meet the two females' sizing gaze. When she saw clearly who the person sitting on the right was, her heart could not help but tighten and felt that the blood in her entire body was boiling. Consort Su Xian on the left was Prince Zhou and Prince Jing's consort mother, and Consort Dongshu on the right was Fu Xiuyi's birth mother. At this moment Consort Dongshu looked over with a smile and said to Consort Su Xian, "Really a neat child. Clean and tidy. One can see that one has good fortune." Good fortune? Shen Miao only felt flustered in her heart. Consort Dongshu looked at her with a gentle face, and if one did not know, one would definitely put down the vigilance in one's heart because of her kind attitude. Consort Dongshu was not favored as there were countless females around Emperor Wen Hui. There were those with background, talents, beauty and character. Consort Dongshu, however, was gentle and slow, did not fight for anything and did not snatch anything. Just based on the word stable, she was able to sit in the position of the four consorts. On the surface, she was the one with the lowest status among the four consorts, but Shen Miao knew that Consort Dongshu was not a harmless female like her appearance. In the beginning, when Shen Miao married Fu Xiuyi, Consort Dongshu also praised that good fortune brings prosperity to the husband, but afterwards Fu Xiuyi's wings gradually grew and Consort Dongshu treated her lukewarmly. When she returned from the Qin country, Consort Dongshu, who was the Empress Dowager, was on the same side as Mei Furen. In Consort Dongshu's eyes, she was also a chess piece that was used to rope in the Shen family, and was a vulgar chess piece that could not be seen in public. Later, when Fu Xiuyi abolished the crown prince, Consort Dongshu was the first to step forward to help Fu Sheng up. She quickly lowered her head to hide the trace of hatred in her eyes. Consort Su Xian and Consort Dongshu, however, thought that Shen Miao was shy, and Consort Su Xian casually asked, "How old are you this year?" Replying to "Your ladyship," Shen Miao softly said, "This official's daughter is 14. 14. Consort Su Xian pondered for a while and smiled. "You will be married soon." This senseless sentence made Luo Shuiyan nervous, as she was most worried about Shen Miao. And a female's marriage was more important to one's entire life. If Shen Miao's marriage was controlled by the people in the palace, Luo Shuiyan's expression was not good. Seeing Luo Shuiyan being so affectionate, Consort Su Xian laughed instead and said, "Shen Furen is so nervous. Why? Are you afraid that Bengong will be a matchmaker for young lady Shen?" Luo Shuiyan hurriedly said, "I dare not." "Do not worry," Consort Su Xian said. "Even if Bengong really wants to be a matchmaker, Bengong will not randomly choose a couple. I will definitely ask young lady's opinion. Speaking of which," Su Xianfei looked at Shen Miao and smiled maliciously, "Shen young lady, do you have anyone in mind now?" To ask Consort Dongshu if Shen Miao had anyone in mind in front of her. Everyone knew that Shen Miao was once in love with Fu Xiuyi. This was to embarrass Consort Dongshu in public. Consort Su Xian had always relied on Emperor Wen Hui's favor to be arrogant and despotic. Among the four consorts, Consort Dongshu was the easiest to bully, so to be able to use Consort Dongshu as a raft, Consort Su Xian was never tired of it. "Many thanks to your ladyship's good intentions. This official's daughter does not have anyone in mind now," Shen Miao said as she hung her head. Consort Su Xian seemed to be somewhat bored and felt that Shen Miao had a wooden temperament and was not like the idiot in the rumors, otherwise she could make fun of it. She waved her hands. "Never mind. If there is none, then there is none." Chapter 377. Luo Shuiyan became more cautious. As long as it was related to Shen Miao, she would have to raise 120% of her attention to deal with it. Just as she was thinking, she heard Consort Dongshu laughing from above. "Furen need not be nervous. Today us two sisters invite you into the palace. In fact, it is to talk about daily life with Furen." After a pause, she then continued, "Us two sisters have never been to the northwestern region before, and it is a story that Furen followed the general into battle. We are very curious about the northern region, and came to invite Furen for a chat." Consort Dongshu's voice was gentle and intimate, like the spring breeze that soothed one's heart. Luo Shuiyan did not relax and instead Shen Miao became more suspicious. She obviously knew that there would be other intentions in entering the palace today, and perhaps it was Emperor Wenhui who was here to inquire about something. Emperor Wenhui deliberately looked for Consort Su Xian and Consort Dong Shu. Both of them, one was domineering and the other was gentle. With one hard and one soft working together, it was easy to make one confused and involuntarily speak. Shen Miao's heart was somewhat nervous. Many thanks to your ladyship's appreciation. Luo Shuiyan also smiled. It is just that the northern region is boring and one fear that your ladyship will not like it. No harm. Consort Dong Shu smiled. Since we invited you over, one would not be afraid of boredom. Her voice paused as she suddenly thought of something and looked at Shan Miao. Fu Xiuyi knew that the emperor wanted them to sound out Luo Shuiyan, and also knew that Luo Shuiyan would bring Shan Miao along as a warning. Yesterday he had instructed her that if Shan Miao was present, Shen Miao must be sent away during the discussion. Fu Xiuyi was Consort Dong Shu's son, so naturally Consort Dong Shu would not doubt, but no matter what, she could not see what was worth guarding against this slightly wooden and timid young lady. Shen Miao's head hung down and one could not see her expression clearly. One only heard Consort Dong Shu saying, but it would be boring for a young lady to hear such interesting things. Tong Yao, bring fifth Shen young lady to stroll around the garden, and when she is tired, bring her to the living quarters to have some snacks and take good care of her. Even though Consort Su Xian was somewhat surprised, she thought that it was Emperor Wenhui's idea and it did not affect her, so naturally she did not refute. Luo Shuiyan's heart was uneasy and it was best to place Shan Miao in front of her, but in the current situation, she also realized that the following conversation with the two consorts would not really be idle. At least in broad daylight, these people did not dare to let anything happen to Shan Miao. Thinking like this, her heart was slightly at ease and she smiled at Shan Miao. Jiao Jiao, follow the female official to stroll around the garden. Mother will come and look for you after speaking to the ladyships. Shen Miao did not refuse, but her heart cried out that it was not good. Why did he send her away without any rhyme or reason? She could act coquettishly and refuse to leave, but that would be too deliberate. Why didn't they let others hear their conversation? Could it be that she had already aroused suspicion? The person who spoke was Consort Dong Shu. It was the first time Consort Dong Shu met her. Could it be that Fu Xiuyi was reminding Consort Dong Shu? This thought flashed through Shen Miao's mind, but she didn't say anything. She stood up respectfully and said goodbye to concubine Su Xian and followed Tong Yao out. Official Tong Yao led her to the garden. Gardens could be seen everywhere in the imperial palace. They were probably built for the imperial concubines, and they were quite beautiful. It was just that Shen Miao did not have the mood to appreciate it. She was more familiar with every inch of land here than anyone else, and knew clearly which part of the garden was what kind of flowers grew, so how would she have any interest to listen? Official Tong Yao also saw that she was absent-minded and said, if young lady Shen is tired, this servant will bring you to the living quarters to sit. There are snacks there. Shen Miao nodded her head. Just as they walked halfway and saw the doors to the living quarters, a little eunuch ran over and said a few words to Tong Yao's ear in a hurry. Tong Yao then said apologetically to Shan Miao, the living quarters is the house in front. Young lady Shen should go in first. This servant will come over after sending the things over. Shen Miao nodded her head and did not haggle over it. That living quarters was right in front and there were guards everywhere in the palace, so there was no fear of anything happening. She herself had come here before and was very clear about it. Walking to the front of the living quarters, she opened the door and walked in. That door closed by itself with a pa sound. Shen Miao's heart quivered, and before she could react, a pair of hands covered her mouth from behind. Shen Miao did not even think as she bit down and bent her elbow to fiercely hit her back. She only heard a sigh sound behind her as she sucked in a mouthful of cold air. Her elbow was grabbed by someone and she was unable to move. A familiar voice sounded with some suppressed anger. Shen Miao, are you a shrew? Shen Miao was slightly surprised, and the person behind her had already released his hand. She turned her head and looked at the other person. Opposite, Xie Jingxing was touching his own hand, and there was a slight anger in his expression. But what Shen Miao cared about was not this. It was different from his previous cynical and unruly romantic appearance. Today he was wearing a dark red official robe with fine cufflinks, long hat and green boots. His sharp and arrogant appearance was a completely different person from before. Shen Miao had never seen him like this before, and was stunned for a moment. Xie Jingxing locked the door and turned his head to look at her with his arms crossed, with an appearance of wanting to settle accounts. But Shen Miao was not afraid of him and only frowned. "What are you doing here?" "Coming out from the palace, one thought that it might be you and came over to take a look." "Really is." Xie Jingxing said it in an incomparably relaxed manner. "The emperor summoned your father to the palace?" Shen Miao's heart jumped. "What do you mean?" Chapter 378. What do you mean? Shen Miao asked. Xie Jingxing would not say such words for no reason, so there must be some other meaning behind it. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows and looked at her. "Shen Yuan is Prince Ding's people?" Shen Miao's heart was slightly shocked, but she did not speak. Before Shen Yuan's accident, he had a secret discussion with Prince Ding. Xie Jingxing said, "The Shen family is now like fire and water. So other than dealing with your father, what else could it be?" "Impossible." Shen Miao cried out involuntarily. Xie Jingxing's eyes stared at her as if he wanted to see through Shen Miao and asked, "Why?" Shen Miao's palms were slightly damp, and there was a moment of confusion in her heart. The Shen family's accident was not in these 2 years, and the imperial family would delay dealing with the Shen family for a period of time because there was currently no justification for it. Shen Yuan worked for Prince Ding, and both of them were extremely dependable people, and would not take action if there was no absolute certainty. For example, in the last lifetime, she only knew that the second and third household also contributed, and Shen Yuan would definitely take out the evidence of rebellion at the end. But what time was it now? It was still too early for the imperial family to deal with Shen Xian, so why would Shen Yuan take action at this time? The evidence at this time should not be complete, and Fu Xiaoyi chose to take action now? How did it become like this? Her expression was uncertain, and when she raised her head, she met with Xie Jingxing's thoughtful gaze. Shen Miao's heart quivered. Xie Jingxing was quick-witted, and one feared that he would be able to find out something from her expression. Thinking of this, she covered up her smile. "Shen Yuan is my second older brother. Why would he harm my father?" Hearing this, Xie Jingxing smiled instead. His smile had a deeper meaning. "Shen Miao, do you think I am a fool?" "Since little Xie Marquis told me all these," Shen Miao said seriously. "But how does His Highness Prince Ding want to deal with my father?" Xie Jingxing shook his head. Shen Miao did not hold much hope, and even if Xie Jingxing knew, there was no reason for him to tell her. The Xie family had dabbled in the Ming-Chi structure, and if one were to carelessly help, one feared that one would get into trouble. Even if she was in Xie Jingxing's position today, she would not even give a reminder. It was just that. Shen Miao sized up Xie Jingxing's official robes and asked in puzzlement, "Why did you enter the palace?" She asked casually, but did not know that her confident look made Xie Jingxing pause for a moment. In just a short moment, Xie Jingxing lazily said, "Enter the palace to request for commander." "Invite a commander?" Shen Miao was surprised for a moment and subconsciously asked, "Invite a commander for whom?" Xie Jingxing only smiled and did not speak. Shen Miao suddenly looked at him. "You asked to be the commander? North border. Xiongnu?" This time Xie Jingxing was surprised. "How do you know?" The matter of the Xiongnu in the northern borderlands was a secret. Before the edict was issued, Shen Xian might not even know about it, much less Shen Miao. Xie Jingxing had always been curious about where Shen Miao's eyes and ears came from, and since she even knew about the matters in the palace, he was even more surprised. Shen Miao stared blankly at him, but her heart was like a raging storm. In the northern borderlands, the Xiongnu had not retreated, but the terrain of the northern borderlands was complex, and the people of the northern borderlands were ferocious and ferocious. A few years ago, Emperor Wenhui only fought in small skirmishes and was unwilling to confront them head-on. Afterwards the Xiongnu became more aggressive, and Emperor Wenhui sent Xie Ding out for an expedition. The Xie family's army was ferocious but was completely annihilated on the battlefield. At the end of the same year, Xie Ding's corpse was wrapped in horsehide and the entire country mourned. In the spring of the second year, Xie Jingxing went out for an expedition on behalf of his father, and was defeated like a landslide. He received the tragic ending of having his heart pierced by 10,000 arrows, skinned and air-dried before being hung on the city walls. Xie Jingxing died at the age of 22 and now he was only 19. Shen Miao's heart felt suffocated for a moment. It was impossible for the emperor to deal with the Xiongnu at this time, and Xie Jingxing requested to be the commander. Xie Ding should not be aware of the matter at this time, and looking at Xie Jingxing's appearance, he should have obtained the order. Chapter 379. Changed again. Changed again. It was obviously a matter of a few years, but it was advanced. If Xie Jingxing went to war now, would it be the same ending as in the past lifetime? As for the Xie family, Shen Miao wanted to keep them to fight against the imperial power in the future. But no matter how much she changed, would some people's fate still follow the old track? Was this arrogant young man with red lips, white teeth, and beautiful romantic features finally going to take the worst step? Xie Jingxing saw that Shen Miao's expression was strange and did not find it strange. His eyes slightly flashed and said, "You seem to be very worried?" Shen Miao did not have the mood to analyze such slightly teasing words, as her heart was somewhat confused. She looked at him and said, "You lead the Xie family's army? Pay more attention to the Xie family's army, and also pay more attention to the people around you." Shen Miao said word by word. In the beginning, her words were somewhat dry, but towards the end, her expression gradually became serious. The wind and sand of the northern Jiang is strong and the armors of the soldiers are heavy. No matter what, do not take off the breastplate. In the previous lifetime, Xie Jingxing's heart was pierced by thousands of arrows, and perhaps it would be better if he wore the breastplate. More importantly, Shen Miao felt that Xie Jingxing's death was too strange. How could a young general with outstanding battle tactics be defeated so miserably? In addition, she gradually understood the situation and knew that the imperial family had attacked the aristocratic families, so it was not possible that there were no imperial family people in the Xie family's army. And the tragedy of the Xie father and son might not be without the addition of a conspiracy. Shen Miao wholeheartedly thought about the overall situation, but did not know that with her and Xie Jingxing's current friendship, it was not to the point of being friends. Thus these words that were full of concern seemed to be somewhat subtle. Xie Jingxing was also surprised by her, and suddenly smiled as he approached Shen Miao and slightly bent his head. He was very close to Shen Miao, but his pair of peach blossom eyes were smiling as he teased. "So concerned about me?" Shen Miao was immersed in her own thoughts and did not realize that he was already so close. She was suddenly startled and had not recovered from her own conjecture, and was at a loss for a moment. Her eyes were clear, and whenever she was at a loss, it was like a child that made one feel pity for her. Xie Jingxing slightly paused, and a feeling of helplessness grew in his heart. He was originally ruthless, and towards the Shen family, he was only a chess piece in the chess game. He knew that Shen Miao's thoughts were deep and her methods were mysterious. She was definitely not a harmless unmarried female like she looked on the surface. But sometimes, he felt that she was just a little girl who didn't understand anything. Bullying a little girl made him feel a little embarrassed. This shame was quickly thrown to the back of his mind. Xie Jingxing took a step back and said, "It is not a good thing that the Shen family army's momentum is too strong." Shen Miao answered, "The one who entered the palace today is my mother, and the ones who summoned her were Consort Su Xian and Consort Dong Shu." When she spoke of Consort Su Xian and Consort Dong Shu, her expression was not respectful, as if she was talking about two ordinary people. Xie Jingxing was also used to it. He said, "Retreat." "Retreat?" Shen Miao asked. Xie Jingxing did not speak anymore. In the end, he still gave Shen Miao a hint. If Shen Miao was smart, she would understand his meaning. Shen Miao's eyes hung down and thought for a while before saying, "Many thanks." Xie Jingxing lazily waved his hand. No one knew what he was thinking. Shen Miao asked again, "Summon the marshal. When do we leave?" 10 days later. "So fast?" Shen Miao exclaimed. "Why?" Xie Jingxing turned his head to look at her and said with a smile that was not a smile, "Can't bear to part." "Not at all." Shen Miao said expressionlessly, "As such, then one wished the little marquis to be victorious and return triumphantly." After receiving the reward, Xie Jingxing said without a care, "At that time I will give you a little thing as a good luck." Chapter 380. Just as Shen Miao was about to speak, she saw Xie Jingxing pressing her waist and said, "Someone is coming." He then smiled at Shen Miao. Farewell then, Jiao Jiao. He turned and flew out of the window of the room. This person walked out of the window as though he was walking through his own front door. Shen Miao was still in a daze when the door was pushed open and Tong Yao walked in. Seeing Shen Miao standing in the middle of the room, she asked curiously, "Why is Shen young lady not sitting?" Shen Miao recovered to her senses and smiled before getting up and walking to one side to sit down. But her heart was still thinking about what Xie Jingxing said just now. Xie Jingxing's commander request was to set off 10 days later. 10 days later. Was it not exactly the same as 3 years later? 3 years later would also be at this time. Xie Jingxing would set off and then the Xie father and son of the Xie family would forever end in the history of Mingqi. The Xie family would be heading towards an inevitable ending like in the previous lifetime. What about the Shen family? What would happen to the Shen family? Xie Jingxing gave her a hint before he left, but that was not the ending that she wanted to see. If one were to retreat like this, one would be able to keep one's life, but it was only to keep one's life. Without the protection of power, peaceful days would become a luxury. The path of the previous lifetime made Shen Miao clearly understand one point. Only by standing in a higher position than the enemy would one be able to truly control one's fate. However, Xie Jingxing's method was more than enough to defend but not enough to attack. What method should be used to break it? In the next few hours, Shen Miao kept thinking about this problem. The snacks on the table were not touched at all. The tea was not even drunk and she did not have the mood to look at those books. This made female official Tong Yao look at her frequently, not knowing how a young lady like Shen Miao could sit for an entire afternoon like an old man. Even those slow-tempered imperial concubines in the palace did not have this kind of patience. One did not know how long they waited until a little eunuch came to invite them. Female official Tong Yao then brought Shen Miao out and Luo Shuiyan was waiting for her at the door. When she saw Shen Miao, she barely squeezed out a smile and pulled Shen Miao out of the palace to return to the residence. Even though Luo Shuiyan tried her best to act as if nothing had happened, what kind of person was Shen Miao? She had long learned to observe one's words and body language in the inner palace and could see Luo Shuiyan's worries. She said, "Mother, what did they say to you?" Luo Shuiyan smiled. "Nothing much, just some matters of living in the Shaochun city. He probably hasn't been to the northwest before and wants to see for himself." Shen Miao asked, "Is it really like this? But if that's the case, why did he specially call Mother into the palace to talk for so long? Isn't that too strange?" Luo Shuiyan touched Shen Miao's head. "What is strange about this? The imperial concubines in the palace can't move around, so their days are a bit boring. Mother will talk to them about distant matters to relieve their boredom. They will also be a bit happier." Even so, Luo Shuiyan was still somewhat worried. Although she did not participate in court affairs, it did not mean that she was ignorant of the dangers of the court. Today, she dealt with it carefully, but it was precisely because she talked with the two concubines about daily life that she was even more puzzled. There were no fools in the palace. Everyone was smart. But in today's conversation, it did not involve military affairs at all, and did not even mention the Shen family army. Instead, he only talked about the commoners of the Shaochun city, which made Luo Shuiyan puzzled. Those who fought had an intuition for danger. She obviously felt that danger was approaching, but did not know where the problem was. Luo Shuiyan felt somewhat depressed. But she was afraid of scaring Shen Miao, and did not intend to talk about these matters with Shen Miao. Shen Miao also did not ask her again. When they returned to the residence, the sky was already nearing evening. Shen Qiu and Shen Exine had been waiting at the residence's doors, and upon seeing both of them return, they were relieved. Chapter 381. After the meal, Luo Shuiyan instructed Shen Miao to rest early before pulling Shen Qiu and Shen Exine back to the room to discuss the matter of entering the palace today. Shen Miao did not follow. She had already heard a lot of things from Luo Shuiyan's mouth, but what she could not understand was what did Shen Yuan give to Fu Xiuyi. The oil lamp shone brightly in her eyes as Shen Miao sat at the table deep in thought. Jingzha and Guyu were careful not to disturb her. Outside the window it started to drizzle. This was the first drizzle since the end of the year, indicating the arrival of spring. Spring was about to arrive and all living things were revived. It was obviously a new hope, but how could one walk out of the dark willows and bright flowers in the heavy ice and snow? Shen Miao closed her eyes. This night, there were also people in embroidered clothes walking in the night. When Xie Jingxing passed by the courtyard, he coincidentally met Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao. When both of them saw him, they immediately stopped and respectfully greeted him, eldest brother. Towards these two people, Xie Jingxing had always turned a blind eye to them, and it was the same today. When he lifted his feet and was about to leave, he was stopped by Xie Chongchao. Xie Chongchao was somewhat pleased with himself. Long time no see, eldest brother. One do not know what eldest brother is busy with. A few days ago there was a hunt and one wanted to go with eldest brother, but father made us follow to Lu Daren's official banquet. Thus one could only regret not going. These days Xie Ding had been bringing Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao to his colleagues' banquets because everyone knew that Xie Ding wanted to bring his two sons into an official career. Speaking of which, Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao were Shu sons and their qualifications were not as good as Xie Jingxing's. If it was not for Xie Jingxing being frivolous and unwilling to enter officialdom, everyone knew that it would not be their turn. But because of Princess Yuqing, Xie Jingxing and Xie Ding were in discord for many years and the relationship between the father and son was like ice. How could it be repaired? Xie Chongwu was more modest than Xie Chongchao, but even so, his eyes could not hide the contentment. He said, eldest brother should also follow along. Eldest brother is proficient in both the pen and the sword and would definitely gain the favor of all the Daren. At that time it would be much easier to enter officialdom. Xie Chongchao and Xie Chongwu had already understood Xie Jingxing's temperament and knew that Xie Jingxing was naturally arrogant. The more he said so, the more impossible it was for him to enter officialdom. In terms of obtaining Xie Ding's favor, they were destined to be inferior to Xie Jingxing. In terms of literary and military strategy and even in terms of appearance, they were far inferior to Xie Jingxing. Now that they finally had a chance to suppress Xie Jingxing, naturally they could not wait to be cocky. When Xie Jingxing heard it, he looked at them with a smile that was not a smile and suddenly asked, very proud? Xie Chongchao and Xie Chongwu were surprised, but Xie Jingxing had already left. The disdain in the corners of his eyes fell into the eyes of the two of them. Looking at Xie Jingxing's fading figure, Xie Chongchao said hatefully, what plaything, who does he think he is? Xie Chongwu's expression was sinister. There will be a day when I will trample him under my feet. When Xie Jingxing returned to the room, there were already two people waiting. One of them was a middle-aged man with a full beard, while the other was a young man with a straight face. The bearded middle-aged man asked, Master, you really want to? Xie Jingxing sat down in front of the table and waved his hands. Xie Chongchao and Xie Chongwu. The younger one said, why not? At the end of the words, there was a hint of killing intent. No need. If we take action now, there will be complications. Xie Jingxing interrupted his words. Without me, Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao would not do anything to Xie Ding. As for Madame Fong, he sneered, keep her. Both of them bowed their heads in agreement. Xie Jingxing took out a booklet from his sleeve. That was the copy of the commander request that was presented today. Chapter 382. In the end he still had to make this move. The first ray of sunlight shone through the carved window onto the table. Shen Miao sat in front of the table without moving. Jingzhe carried a silver basin in and jumped in shock upon entering. Why is young lady up so early today? Shen Miao did not speak as Jingzhe walked over. The oil lamp in front of the table had already burned out and on Shen Miao's fair face, there was a faint greenish black under her eyes. Jingzhe was surprised for a moment and exclaimed, could it be that young lady did not sleep for the entire night? Shen Miao shook her head and pressed her forehead tiredly. She sat there for the whole night. Xie Jingxing's hint made her puzzled and confused. She did not know what Shen Yuan gave to Fu Xiuyi, and only knew that it must be bad news for the Shen family. And the word retreat was a move that she did not want the Shen family to make. How should he get out of this predicament? Jingzhe spoke with some heartache. No matter how worried young lady is, one should not torment one's body like this. Master and madam will be heartbroken if they see this. Young lady, you should eat something first and rest. You don't look well. What if young lady falls down first? Shen Miao also felt that her stomach was rumbling, and after thinking for an entire night, her head was somewhat dizzy, so she said, bring some porridge over. I will sleep for a while after eating. Do not mention this matter to others. Jingzhe made an AI sound before turning and jogging out, treating it as going to the kitchen to bring Shen Miao's breakfast. Shen Miao stood up and wanted to use hot water to wash her face. Just as she was washing halfway, she suddenly heard footsteps outside the door and Jingzhe ran back. So fast. Shen Miao was a little surprised. There was still a distance from the small kitchen to here, and even if Jingzhe ran over, she would still need to wait for a while. Miss, something bad has happened. Jingzhe was somewhat flustered as she said. Someone from the palace has arrived. Summon Master, foreign and eldest young master to the palace immediately. The handkerchief in Shen Miao's hands fell into the basin. She calmed herself down and said, I'll go take a look. In the courtyard, the eunuch from the palace had received Emperor Wen Hui's orders and was talking to Shan Exan. These people would usually be more polite when they saw the formidable general. But today his attitude was not very clear. Sometimes, the attitude of the master could be seen from the attitude of the messenger. Obviously, this trip to the palace was not a good thing. When Shen Miao came out, not only Shen Exan, Luo Shuiyan and Shen Qiu were in the courtyard, the people from the other households also came out. Even old Shen Foreign brought Shen Yuanbo out. It was just that looking at this look, old Shen Foreign did not show any concern and instead looked on coldly, as if she was afraid of drawing fire onto herself and avoided it. On the other hand, Shen Wan asked the eunuch, May I ask why His Majesty summoned Big Brother to the palace? The eunuch looked up at the sky. I am only acting on His Majesty's orders. I do not know His Majesty's intentions. Darren, quickly follow me into the palace. He urged Shen Exan to leave quickly. When Shen Qiu saw Shen Miao walking over, he was somewhat nervous and quickly pulled Shen Miao's hand. Younger sister, why did you come over? Seeing Shen Miao looking over, he quickly comforted her. Younger sister, do not worry. His Majesty only summoned us to the palace to discuss some military matters and will be back soon. When he returns, eldest brother will bring you to eat tonghulu. He was afraid of scaring Shen Miao but did not know that in Shen Miao's eyes, this look was even more suspicious. To summon Shen Exan, Luo Shuiyan and Shan Qiu to the palace, even though she was not brought along upon careful thought, the people brought along were the leading figures of the Shen family's army, so this matter was definitely related to the Shen family's army. Now that it was the Shen family's military power, it was a hot potato, and once it involved military power, one must be careful of everything. Chapter 383. At this time, if Shen Miao continued to show fear, not only would she not be able to help, it would instead burden Luo Shuiyan and the rest. Thus Shen Miao smiled. Really? Eldest brother must keep to his words. Seeing Shen Miao like this, Shen Qiu then let out a sigh of relief. Shen Qiu knew that Shen Miao was intelligent, but did not want Shen Miao to be involved with the matters of the court. Moreover, in the court matters, it was never a person's worth, as there would be deaths and injuries at every turn and countless people would be involved, so how would it be easy to explain? Luo Shuiyan and Shen Exan also comforted Shen Miao. Jiao Jiao, just stay in the residence and do not go anywhere. Wait for father and mother to return, then we will go together to make new clothes for Jiao Jiao for the beginning of spring. Shen Miao also complied. She watched helplessly as the eunuch brought Shen Exan and entourage out of the residence. Chun Roqiu pulled Shen Wan's hands and said worriedly, Why would eldest brother and eldest Saw suddenly enter the palace? Did something happen? Shen Wan shook his head. Shen Gui said, Eldest brother is already in the limelight and does not know how to conduct himself in court. One fear that if something really happened, there would not be anyone to speak to. These words were somewhat meaningful. Shen Gui's meaning was that if something really happened to Shen Exan, the two brothers Shen Gui and Shen Wan would not send charcoal in the snow. Shen Miao sneered in her heart. She only heard Shen Yu timidly saying, If something happened to eldest Bo, it should be a very big matter. Will it implicate us by bringing them all away? How would it implicate you? Shen Gui smiled. If it implicates you, the first to bear the brunt should be little 5. Shen Gui's words were vicious. After the successive loss of his sons, Shen Gui's career was not smooth. He was originally jealous that Shen Exan's position was higher than his and his prestige was higher than his. Now that he saw Shen Exan's misfortune, Naturally he was overjoyed and even hoped that Shin Xian's branch would be wiped out so that there would no longer be any obstacles in front of him. A trace of schadenfreude flashed in Shen Yu's eyes as she looked sympathetically at Shen Miao. Isn't fifth younger sister very pitiful? Shen Miao did not get angry but smiled instead and said lightly, the servants in the palace do not know His Majesty's intention, so it seems that both Shu Shu have already understood His Majesty's intention. She looked at Shen Gui. Since second uncle is able to predict things like a deity, when this matter reaches the ears of His Majesty will appreciate second uncle's ability to understand others. It's rare to see someone like second uncle who can understand others. His Majesty can even be compared to the previous dynasty's official way. As these words came out, Shen Wan and Shen Gui's expressions changed slightly. What was the greatest taboo for an emperor? It was for his officials to randomly guess the emperor's intentions. Shen Miao's words were not to say that Shen Gui was very clear about Emperor Wen Hui's thoughts. So what was he planning? She even used official Wei from the previous dynasty to insinuate that official Wei was the emperor's trusted aide. Often, the emperor only needed a glance to know what the emperor wanted to do. When the emperor's position was unstable, he had worked together with official Wei to control many of the opposing ministers. But in the end, when the emperor was in power, he had given official Wei a death warrant. No monarch would like an official who could clearly understand one's thoughts. If one understood too clearly, there would be no reverence, and if there was no reverence, perhaps one day a knife would be placed on one's neck. This was the imperial family, the most suspicious. One sentence could decide a person's life and death. Shen Miao's words made Shen Gui's and Shen Wan's expressions change, but they dared not refute it. They were afraid that if these words were to be spread out and heard by Emperor Wen Hui, one did not know how much trouble it would bring to themselves. Both of them were secretly shocked as they did not know where did Shen Miao learn the ability to pin such a big hat onto others with just one sentence. In the past, it was Mei Foran's usual tactic. At this moment Shen Miao was also forced by Shen Gui's unrestrained mouth, and did not really want to fight with them here. The most urgent matter was to think of how to solve this matter. Old Shen Foran had seen enough of the show and was not willing to let her son fall into a disadvantageous position, so she coldly snorted, "Will only bring trouble to the Shen family." She was still thinking about the matter of Shen Xian wanting to separate from the family, but once this matter came out, the matter of the separation would be delayed. Old Shen Foran even thought that if something happened to Shen Xian, they would not be implicated and it would only be the first household that would be implicated. Would not the first household's assets all belong to her? Thinking of this, her eyes revealed a look of greed. Shen Miao's heart was filled with disgust. This room of people had fully acted out what was called throwing stones at a person who was down. The Shen family was definitely on the list of despicable people in the world. Wan Yinyang pulled Shen Dongling's hand and hid at the back. She dared not say anything in this kind of situation. Even though Ren Wan Yun was awake, she did not leave Kai Yun Yuan and did not appear today. Shen Dongling said softly, "But what would happen to eldest Bo? Eldest Bo is not in the Ding capital all year round. Could it be that there would be other rewards because of the previous victory?" Shen Dongling's words were most likely to ease the atmosphere. Shen Yu was somewhat displeased with her words and old Shen Foran also revealed an unhappy expression, but only Shen Miao was slightly surprised. Not in the Ding capital all year round? Yes, Shen Xian and wife and Shen Qiu had been fighting all year round in the bitter cold northwestern region, and had just returned to the Ding capital. It was impossible to use the excuse of being in the Ding capital as an excuse. And yesterday Consort Su Xian and Consort Dong Shu were asking about the days in the Shaochun city. What was the use of asking about the days in the Shaochun city for? Shen Miao did not believe that the delicate females in the palace would be interested in the remote northwestern region. There must be a connection. Not in the Ding capital, what kind of crime would it be? Chapter 384. Shen Miao's mind was unsettled and no longer stood here entangled with the Shen family. She did not even turn her head back and quickly walked back to her own room. Outside, Shen Gui and entourage had seen enough of the excitement and wanted to inquire about the matter. Thus they dispersed in twos and threes. Shen Yu followed behind Chan Ro Qiu, and there was a trace of joy on her face. Yesterday she heard that it was Consort Dong Shu who saw Shan Miao and Luo Shui Yan. Shen Yu's heart was very uneasy. Consort Dongshu was after all Prince Ding's consort mother, and if Consort Dongshu had eyes on her, what would happen if she randomly pulled strings? Fortunately today it seemed that the first household was unlucky. Thinking of this, Shen Yu's footsteps became relaxed. It was Shen Dongling who was being held by Wan Yinyang, who looked at the courtyard thoughtfully before following back. The huge western courtyard became empty in a blink of an eye. Even Achi followed Shen Xian's guards back to the Shen family's army. Emperor Wen Hui suddenly summoned people into the palace, and naturally the Shen family's army was imprisoned. Fortunately Mo Qing was still around because Mo Qing was not in the Shen family's army yet. In the room Jingzhe Guyu Bai Lu and Shuangjiang were standing behind Shen Miao. Mo Qing stood by the door with his head hung down and a trace of solemnity appeared on his face. Even though Shen Dongling said that perhaps Emperor Wen Hui would continue to reward Shen Xian, everyone knew that it was impossible. Shen Miao sat at the table with her brows tightly knitted, which made Mo Qing's heart slightly comforted. He was initially worried that Shen Miao would be at a loss of what to do after hearing the news, but now even though Shen Miao's face was solemn, she was not nervous at all. Shen Miao looked at the notes in front of her. The Shen family was then exterminated by Fu Xiuyi in one fell swoop. At that time she had tried to stop it, but it was Fu Xiuyi who, in front of all the civil and military officials, listed out the Shen family's crimes one by one until she was speechless. Even though one knew that it was all fake, but these fake evidence were so conclusive that it made one powerless to refute. That day in the throne room, the scenes of the past were like knives and chisels that were carved into her heart. That denouncing the Shen family was according to the length of time, day by day. Now it was the 69th year of the Ming-Qi, and she was reborn in the 68th year of the Ming-Qi. In the things that Xin Yuan presented to Fu Xiuyi, the criminal evidence must be something that happened in the 68th year of the Ming-Qi or before. In the 68th year of Ming-Qi, what crimes did the Shen family commit? Shen Miao closed her eyes and some scenes flashed through her mind. She was wearing the Empress court dress and the phoenix hairpins on her head could not hide the embarrassment around her. The civil and military officials were agitated. Pei Lang was indifferent and Fu Xiuyi angrily threw the booklet at her face. A civil official was reading, in the 68th year of Ming-Qi, the Shen family's officers and soldiers disobeyed the emperor's order and released the bandits, deceiving the monarch. Releasing the bandits without permission was deceiving the emperor. Shen Miao suddenly opened her eyes. She suddenly remembered that in the 68th year of Ming-Qi, there was indeed not a small matter that happened. Shen Xian went against the Shirong and defeated them, seizing 3 cities. Emperor Wen Hui ordered that everyone in the cities be killed without mercy. To a general, massacring a city was the cruelest achievement. And in the Shirong city, other than the soldiers, most of the people were the elderly, the weak, women and children. These old and weak women and children were like the common people of Ming-Qi, safe and sound, and the ones at fault were the Shirong soldiers. Shen Xian was not a person who liked to kill, thus in private, he left the lives of those women and children. Other than the Shen family's army, no one else knew about this matter and the people of the Shen family's army were brought up by Shen Xian, so it was impossible for them to betray Shen Xian. In this there should be Shen Yuan's credit. Perhaps a long time ago, Shen Yuan had buried a hidden chess piece in the Shen family's army. It was just that after the crown prince was deposed, the entire Shen family's crimes were pursued one by one, and this crime of deceiving the monarch was not that important. However, in the hands of Fu Xiuyi, who had always been steady, to take it out at this time when the time was not ripe, it could only mean that the current situation made Fu Xiuyi feel a crisis, and the Shen family had become a variable. In this lifetime, because there was no entanglement between her and Fu Xiuyi did not stop Emperor Wen Hui to let the Shen family stay for a few more years, and the imperial family finally had their eyes on the Shen family, this fat meat. Chapter 385. So the evidence that Shen Yuan handed over to Fu Xiuyi should be the crime of Shen Xian not acting according to Emperor Wen Hui's order to massacre the city. This matter could be said to be big or small. It was just that in the current situation, the imperial family was bent on taking back the Shen family's military power, so how would they let go of this opportunity? Things had become extremely tricky. Shen Miao clenched her fists and slowly calmed her emotions. Now it was not the worst time yet. Even though the imperial family wanted to deal with the Shen family, They only wanted to recover the military power. To move against the Shen family at this time, it would inevitably cause dissatisfaction from the other aristocratic families. The Fu family was cunning and would not do that. What should be done at this time? The few people in the room looked at Shen Miao's changing expression and were puzzled in their hearts. But they saw Shen Miao suddenly standing up. She said, "I want to go out of the residence for a while." Ah! Guyu was surprised for a moment. "Young lady, to leave the residence at this time would attract gossip. Something happened in the family and one's heart is depressed. How about finding a friend to relieve it?" Shen Miao's eyes turned cold. Go. Mo Qing naturally had no objection to Shen Miao's decision. Moreover, in his heart, he was convinced by Shen Miao and knew that Shen Miao had her own way of doing things. At this moment, seeing Shen Miao like this, his heart calmed down a little and said, "This subordinate will go and arrange." Seeing Mo Qing like this, Jingzhe and Guyu did not speak anymore, and let Bai Lu and Shuangjiang stay in the residence to wait for news while they went out with Shen Miao. Shen Miao's actions naturally caused the people in the residence to be surprised, and when someone came to probe, she only said that she was going to look for Feng and Ning. Feng and Ning and Shen Miao were considered as friends, so it was natural for Shen Miao to look for Feng and Ning to complain about the first household of the Shen family. Thus no one stopped him. After leaving the residence, Mo Qing drove the carriage towards the Feng residence. After driving past the small alley and confirming that no one was following, Shen Miao then said, "Go to the Su residence." Su residence? Guyu was surprised for a moment. Which Su residence? Pingnan Count Su family Su Yu residence. Mo Qing, who was outside, was very familiar with the roads in the Ding capital, and was even more clear about which noble residences were located. He did not need to ask for directions and turned the horse around to head in another direction. Jingzhe and Guyu wanted to ask but did not dare to. It was true that Shen Miao had an idea. But even they, as servants, knew that in the Shen family's court, the Xie family was one of the political enemies and the Marquis of Linan's Xie family, and the Count of Pingnan Su family were grasshoppers on the same boat. Naturally, the Su family and the Shen family were like fire and water. Now that the Shen family was in trouble, why would they help their sworn enemy? But he probably wasn't asking for help. Jingzhe and Guyu anxiously thought. In the residence of the Count of Pingnan, there was still one person sitting in Su Mingfeng's room. That person's purple gold robe was overflowing with color, and there was a casual and lazy smile on his face. On the contrary, it was Su Mingfeng who had an anxious face. "What is going on? Why did you ask to be the commander? The Ding capital is too boring. Go to the northern Jiang to play," Xie Jingxing said. "Play?" Su Mingfeng looked at him and anger appeared on his usually cultured and refined face. "Do you know what kind of place the northern Jiang is? Currently no one dares to confront the Xiongnu, so why are you going to join in the fun?" Seeing that Xie Jingxing did not take his words to heart, Su Mingfeng slowed down his tone. "I know that your heart is not happy that your father brought Xie Chongqiao and Xie Chongwu into officialdom, but there is no need to use this method to vent. This matter is not a small matter and is not a child's play. Even though you are highly skilled in martial arts, the northern Jiang's terrain is complex and you have never been there before. Jingxing, you cannot go." Su Mingfeng. Xie Jingxing laughed. "His Majesty had already given me the commander request. Do you think that I can still not go?" Su Mingfeng was surprised for a moment and a look of despair appeared on his face. The emperor's words were like gold and jade, so there was no reason to go back on it. With the commander request in his hands, there was no leeway at this time. Even if Xie Jingxing changed his mind, he would still have to go. Chapter 386. Seeing Su Mingfeng like this, Xie Jingxing said, "Are you cursing me to have an accident or curse me to have an accident? Bastard!" Su Mingfeng scolded and was somewhat angry. "Why did you not discuss this matter with me? What's the point of discussing it with you?" Xie Jingxing took the teapot at the side and poured some tea for himself to drink. "It is not bad for me." "You." Su Mingfeng was angry but helpless at the same time. She knew that Xie Jingxing had a lawless temperament, and once he decided on something, even 9 bulls would not be able to pull him back. It was said that they were childhood friends, but now it seemed that it was as if his head was hot. Xie Jingxing did not tell him anything, and even if he did, it was only a notice. For example, right now, he was just here to inform him that he had obtained the commander's token. Once the time was up, he would set off. Why do you want to go to the northern Jiang? Su Mingfeng paced back and forth in the room. Do you not want to live anymore? Do you know that if you win it'll be great, but if you lose? Your two Shu younger brothers would be the first to clap their hands. Su Mingfeng suddenly clapped his hands and stood in front of Xie Jingxing. You are assured to leave them in the Ding capital? You are not afraid of what your father would say. Speaking till here, she suddenly paused and looked at Xie Jingxing. Does your father know about this matter? Xie Jingxing shook his head. Look, Su Mingfeng said. You are so willful and Marquis Xia would definitely be furious when he knows about it. At that time, your two Shu younger brothers would stir up some gossip, and there is still a hidden Yinyang in the residence. When you return from the northern Jiang, who knows what would happen to the residence? Xie Jingxing, are you really assured? Su Mingfeng treated Xie Jingxing as a real friend and his words were all for Xie Jingxing's sake. Xie Jingxing smiled and looked as if he did not want to talk about it anymore. When I leave the capital, help me look after the princess residence. In the Ding capital, other than the Su family, Xie Jingxing had the most interactions with Princess Rong Xian of the princess residence. Going to the northern borderline now would take at least a year and a half, but at worst, he did not know when he would be able to return. If Princess Rong Xian knew about it, she would definitely be sentimental. Su Mingfeng wanted to scold Xie Jingxing a few more words, but seeing that Xie Jingxing's expression sank, it was not good to say anything more. One heard Xie Jingxing said again, within these 2 years, it is best for the Su family to avoid the spotlight. You do not enter officialdom and just pretend to be ill. Huh. Su Mingfeng felt strange. What does this have to do with me? Didn't you say that as long as I become an official and don't meddle in military affairs it would be fine? Just do what I tell you to do. Xie Jingxing glanced at him and stood up. I am leaving. Hey. Su Mingfeng said, You are leaving just like this? What are you doing here today? Goodbye. Xie Jingxing shrugged his shoulders but suddenly heard a putong sound at the door. Su Mingfeng jumped in shock when he opened the door and a round dumpling rolled in. The dumpling was round and chubby. Su Mingfeng helped him up and patted the dust on Tuanzi's clothes before saying, Ming Lang, why did you come over? The chubby dumpling was not anyone else but the second young master of the Su family, Su Ming Lang. He saw that there was someone else in the room and this person was Xie Jingxing. He first shrunk back in fright before hiding behind Su Mingfeng's back and pulled the corner of Su Mingfeng's clothes. Eldest brother, older sister of the Shen family is here. What? Su Mingfeng did not understand what was going on and saw his substitute servant running over at the door, panting, Young master, there is a young lady looking for you at the residence's entrance. When the words were said, Su Mingfeng was surprised for a moment before looking at Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. Su Mingfeng coughed lightly. Nonsense. How would I know any young lady? Chapter 387. It is true. That servant hurriedly said. It is said that it is the 5th young lady of the formidable great general's residence, and is looking for you to discuss something. 5th young lady of the formidable great general's residence. Su Mingfeng was still sorting out this tongue twister when Su Minglang at the side had already jumped up. It is older sister Shan Miao. Eldest brother. Older sister Shen Miao is looking for you. Shen Miao? Su Mingfeng was stunned for a moment and Xie Jingxing frowned. Not to mention the Shen and Xie family, they had no dealings with the Su family. As for privately, Su Mingfeng and Shen Miao did not have any friendship. Shen Miao suddenly came to the door and Su Mingfeng was also confused. He asked Xie Jingxing, could it be that she is here to look for you? Older sister Shen Miao is definitely here to look for me. Su Minglang happily held his face. Eldest brother. Let us go and see older sister Shen Miao. This? Su Mingfeng hesitated. Go. Xie Jingxing suddenly opened his mouth and his gaze seemed to have a deeper meaning. Just in your room. When Shen Miao brought Mo Qing into Su Mingfeng's room, she just happened to see Su Mingfeng's servant bringing Su Minglang out. The snow-white glutinous rice dumpling struggled to fiddle with it, but it was futile at the end. When he saw her, his eyes lit up and he excitedly waved his short hands. Older sister Shan. Shen Miao stopped by his side and revealed a rare smile as she touched his head. Why are you here? Eldest brother did not let me in. Su Minglang put on a long face. Older sister Shen, are you here to see me? The servant at the side coughed lightly and smiled apologetically at Shen Miao. Sorry young lady Shen, young master is waiting for you inside. This was to cover up Su Minglang's words. Su Minglang was obviously very dissatisfied as he looked at Shen Miao. Shen Miao smiled. I am here to look for your eldest brother to discuss some matters. Next time I will come to see you. I will bring you some sweet cakes to eat. Hearing that, Su Minglang immediately became happy and no longer struggled. He carefully instructed Shen Miao not to forget the agreement before leaving happily with the servant. Mo Qing, who was following behind, was somewhat surprised. Shen Miao was not a patient and kind person to strangers, and just now she treated Su Minglang with a good temper. If one did not know, one would think that Su Minglang was her son. Just as this strange conjecture appeared, it was suppressed by Mo Qing. Not to mention that the age difference between Shen Miao and Su Minglang was not that big. Moreover, Shen Miao was a young lady now, so how would there be a mother? Shen Miao pushed the door open and walked in. In the room, there was only Su Mingfeng sitting alone in front of a small table. Seeing Shen Miao entering and even bringing along Mo Qing, he was first startled but did not stop her and allowed her to enter the room. The servant hurriedly closed the door. Mo Qing stood in front of the door and did not move, in case there were any accidents. Shen Miao walked straight to the opposite of Su Mingfeng and sat down. When she did all these, her entire person seemed incomparably natural. If it was in her own residence, of course there would be no problem. But this was her first time coming to the residence, and before this, she did not even have any interaction with Su Mingfeng. To be so calm in the face of a stranger, Su Mingfeng could not help but cast sidelong glances. Shen Miao was also sizing Su Mingfeng up. In all fairness, Su Mingfeng was a handsome youth. It was just that standing in front of Xie Jingxing, who was like a scorching sun, the brilliance was more or less overshadowed. In fact, Shen Miao knew that Su Mingfeng was not an ordinary son of an official and had some abilities. It was a pity that at the end the Su family was completely destroyed because of the matter of selling soldiers and horses. Su Mingfeng also lost his life in that disaster, and at the end the Su father and son's corpses were personally collected by Xie Jingxing. The relationship between the Su family and the Xie family could be seen. Chapter 388. It was because of this that the Su family and the Shen family did not have much contact. Su Mingfeng felt somewhat uncomfortable being probed by Shen Miao's gaze and lightly coughed. Shen young lady, one do not know the reason for coming to the residence? My father, mother and eldest brother were summoned to the palace by His Majesty. Does young master Su know why? Shen Miao asked. Su Mingfeng was somewhat inexplicable. The matter of the Shen family had spread throughout the entire Ding capital early in the morning, and all the officials felt insecure. After all, as an official in court, once there was a little bit of trouble, it would be a huge matter. But what did the Shen family's mishap have to do with his Su family? I do not know. Su Mingfeng answered. He really did not know what was the reason why Shen Exine was summoned to the palace. Everyone guessed that it was Emperor Wen Hui who wanted to punish the Shen family, but no one knew what the charges were. When my father was in the northwest region destroying the Shirong, His Majesty ordered a massacre, but my father did not comply. Shen Miao said. So one think that His Majesty will punish my father for deceiving the monarch and disobeying military orders. Su Mingfeng jumped in shock. It was not because of the charges that Shen Miao said, but because Shen Miao told him about it so easily. This matter could be considered as a handle in anyone's hands, and it was too late to cover it up, but Shen Miao actually told him so bluntly. Even though Su Mingfeng was intelligent since young, he did not know how to continue and could only laugh dryly twice before saying perfunctorily, then what can be done? So I want to ask Heir Su for help. Shen Miao said. Su Mingfeng was once again stunned. He thought about it and could not think of what kind of friendship did he have with Shen Miao, or what kind of friendship did the Shen and Su family had that was worth the Su family lending a helping hand. In a situation where he could not figure it out, Su Mingfeng secretly glanced at the folding screen. Shen young lady is joking. He quickly retracted his gaze and looked at Shen Miao before smiling politely. It is just that what help can this one offer? Most likely Shen young lady has overestimated this one. Moreover, forgive this one for speaking rudely. This matter is complicated, and if one were to randomly help, one fear that one would invite trouble to oneself. One really cannot find a reason to bear the danger and be a good person. Su Mingfeng's words were said in a polite manner but mercilessly rejected Shen Miao's request. Su Mingfeng also saw it clearly that the Shen Miao in front of him had a straightforward temperament. He simply abandoned his usual roundabout ways and straightforwardly stated no. Hearing this, Shen Miao gently smiled. When she smiled, her pair of eyes were very clear, and there seemed to be some naivety. However, in the blink of an eye, her smile turned cold. She said, Prince Su, although you are not an official, your father seems to be in charge of the military horses. Su Mingfeng slightly frowned and said, correct. Did your father tell heir that there seems to be a problem with the military horses? Shen Miao said. This time Su Mingfeng's brows wrinkled even tighter as he stared at Shen Miao. What does Shen young lady mean by this? Shen Miao smiled gently. I heard that there are some small problems with the military horses recently, and a few of the military horses are sick. Medicine is ineffective? Su Mingfeng tightened his grip on the teacup. Shen Miao's words were not false. These days Suyu was extremely busy with this matter, and other than a few subordinates in the military horses and Suyu who secretly told him about it, no one else knew about it. But it was impossible for the people in the military horses to tell Shen Miao. If it were to spread, Emperor Wen Hui would punish them and everyone would not be able to bear the consequences, and it would be even worse. But how did Shen Miao know about it? Su Mingfeng heard his own dry voice. Shen young lady, where did you hear these false words from? Chapter 389. Untruthful words? Shen Miao sighed, but there seemed to be a slight smile in her eyes. She got close to Su Mingfeng and whispered, could it be that heir Su is not afraid that this horse disease will eventually become a horse plague? Su Mingfeng's pupils suddenly widened. Horse plague. With the Count of Pingnan's cautious temperament and having dealt with military horses for a lifetime, it is impossible for him not to suspect this. Shen Miao pretended to be surprised. Why? Was it not told to heir Su? Su Mingfeng gritted his teeth and did not speak. So you did not tell him? Naturally, so you had told him that the horse disease that no medicine could cure was a precursor to the horse plague. A military horse needed a lot of money to feed, and once the horse plague broke out, the military horses would suffer heavy casualties. Not only was there a loss of money on the battlefield, without sufficient military horses, the army would not be able to fight at all. If the blame came down from the top, a light punishment would be losing one's black hat and a heavy punishment would be losing one's head. It was just that this horse disease came in a strange and tricky manner. Many veterinarians were found, but there was no solution. Recently, they had no choice but to separate the sick horses, but there were still horses dying intermittently. If at the end it was uncontrollable and it really became a horse plague, one feared that it would be a big disaster. Shen young lady, what is your opinion? Su Mingfeng said bitterly, but as he spoke, he glanced at the screen without revealing anything. At this moment Shen Miao was not anxious. She grabbed an empty teacup on the table and poured a cup of tea for herself before taking a sip. When Su Mingfeng saw it, he wanted to say something, but after thinking about it, he swallowed it down and pretended to be listening attentively. I have a way to solve your horses, Shen Miao said. Su Mingfeng was surprised for a moment. Is this true? Fortunately, a veterinarian with superior skills and heard that he had solved the same horse disease. Once he is found, the death of the military horses can be easily solved. Su Mingfeng did not speak. Shen Miao picked up the teacup and took another sip before lightly saying, it is not too late to mend the pen after the sheep is lost. Heir Su, when the horse disease spreads and cannot be concealed, it would not only be the horses that suffer. Su Mingfeng gritted his teeth and looked at Shen Miao. Shen young lady specially sent a good strategy today. One fear that there is something else to say. His eyes flashed. Or perhaps you think that my Su family has a good plan to help the Shen family. Please tell me. Straightforward, Shen Miao praised. Su Mingfeng smiled bitterly. How was it that he was refreshed? It was obviously Shen Miao who was cunning. Previously he had said that the Su family had no obligation to wade into these muddy waters to help Shen Xian. So Shen Miao directly stated the terms of the transaction. It had to be said that Shen Miao was a person who knew how to grasp people's weaknesses. She took the matter of the military horses that the Su family was most worried about. This matter had not been spread and even he and Su spoke about it in private, so he did not know how Shen Miao knew about it. No matter what, he couldn't refuse such a condition. It was no wonder that Shen Miao did not please him and spoke so directly. She simply had a trump card in her hands. A deal was a deal. No one could take advantage of the other. I know that Count Pingnan knows many people in the imperial court. Compared to my parents who are always in the northwest, Count Pingnan's influence is much wider. I would like to ask Count Pingnan's help to gather all the friends and help my father to submit a memorial. Submit a memorial? Su Mingfeng's brows wrinkled. All to plead for General Shan. Shen Miao shook her head. No. I'll blame my father. Su Mingfeng was stunned. One think that Count Pingnan would not be willing to wade into these muddy waters. Shen Miao gently smiled. So how to persuade Count Pingnan will be handed over to Heir Su. It is just that Heir Su must not tell Count Pingnan about the matter of the military horses and must not mention me. Otherwise this transaction will be over. Su Mingfeng did not understand. He looked up and saw that the young female in front of him still had the appearance of a young girl. Her brows were delicate and gentle, and when she smiled, there was some innocence and clarity, but when she did not smile, there was a coldness in her eyes which added a bit of majesty. And this kind of pressure was something that even Su Yu had never given Su Mingfeng this kind of feeling. I cannot stay for long. We'll have to trouble Heir Su to send a letter to my residence after making a decision. After the matter is done, I will definitely send it to the veterinarian's place. She stood up and bowed slightly to Su Mingfeng before saying, "Many thanks." Su Mingfeng quickly stood up and said, "Definitely." Shen Miao swept a glance at the screen before turning around and bringing Mo Qing out of the room. After Shen Miao left, Su Mingfeng then let out a sigh of relief. A person walked out from behind the screen. If it was not Xie Jingxing, who else could it be? You have heard it. Su Mingfeng said. This young lady of the Shen family is more unfathomable than imagined. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows and did not speak. Su Mingfeng's gaze landed on the table where the teacup that Shen Miao drank from was still there. The rim of the cup was slightly wet. Speaking of which, that is what you drank from. Su Mingfeng said, You. Xie Jingxing unceremoniously kicked him with his leg. Chapter 390. Ayo. Su Mingfeng exclaimed, Why did you kick me for? I also wanted to remind her just now, but she drank so fast, so what can I do? Su Mingfeng sized Xie Jingxing up. Moreover, the one who suffered a loss is others and not you. What is there to haggle about? Xie Jingxing ignored him and sat down in front of the table before asking, Is what she said about the troops true? Hearing that, Su Mingfeng's face became ugly and under Xie Jingxing's sharp gaze, he said with difficulty, Correct? Why did you hide it from me? Xie Jingxing asked in a threatening manner. Su Mingfeng shook his head and smiled bitterly. Only father and I discussed this matter privately, and I did not speak of it to anyone else. It is even more impossible for father to do so. Who would joke about something that would cause one to lose one's black veil hat? I originally wanted to tell you after a period of time. But how would young Lady Shen know about this matter? Could it be that they have acquaintances in the military horses? But the people in the military horses would not speak about this matter. Xie Jingxing glanced at Su Mingfeng. Even though Su Mingfeng was a talented person, he was protected watertight in the Su family since young and had not experienced any big storms. Speaking of which, the trump cards in Shen Miao's hands were endless, and it was out of his expectations time and time again. Xie Jingxing gave Shen Miao a retreat strategy but did not expect that Shen Miao did not use his strategy at all. To unite with the Su family and other familiar officials to submit a memorial to Shen Xian and do the opposite, it could indeed solve Shen Xian's urgent situation. However, the emperor's mind was unfathomable, and if Shen Xian was let off this time, the Shen family's army would have great power, and one day the emperor would see it as a thorn in his eyes. One could hide for a while but not for a lifetime. It was just that. Did Shen Miao really not think of this layer? Xie Jingxing did not think so. Seeing that Xie Jingxing did not speak and his usually frivolous face had a frowning and pondering expression, Su Mingfeng also became nervous. He knew that even though this good friend looked casual, he understood the situation in court more thoroughly than anyone else. Su Mingfeng asked why? Is there any problem? Xie Jingxing shook his head. What do you think? It is indeed highly possible for the horse disease to reach the horse plague. Moreover, this matter is of great importance and father is the commander in charge of the military horses. Once something happens, the Su family will be the first to bear the brunt. Su Mingfeng said, if Xin young lady really did not lie to me, I think that it is possible to try. Even though it is somewhat difficult to convince father, but I will try my best. Pausing, Su Mingfeng looked at Xie Jingxing. What do you think about this deal? Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows. The biggest winner of the transaction is definitely not you, but you also did not suffer a loss. He looked at Su Mingfeng. Just do as she said. Su Mingfeng lowered his head and was somewhat hesitant. But to jointly impeach Shen Xian, she is not afraid of overreaching herself. Did you not discover? Xie Jingxing said with a smile that was not a smile. She understands the emperor's thoughts more clearly than you. Su Mingfeng did not speak but saw Xie Jingxing standing up. Su Mingfeng was stunned. Where are you going? Requesting the commander's order. Xie Jingxing returned to his previous lazy look. One must let the Marquis of Lin and take a look. Oh. Outside the main doors of the Xie residence, Shen Miao put on her bamboo hat and asked Mo Qing who was beside her, just now in Su Mingfeng's room, did you feel that there was anyone else? Mo Qing was startled. One did not feel that there was anyone else present. Did young lady discover something? Shen Miao shook her head. Mo Qing's martial arts skills were outstanding, and even he did not discover that there was anyone in the room, so there should be no one else. It was just that. Shen Miao felt somewhat strange in her heart. Why did Su Mingfeng keep glancing at the screen? Even though she did not have any martial arts skills, her ability to observe was at the point of perfection. It was more than enough to deal with Su Mingfeng, this kind of immature youth. Chapter 391. Now that he thought about it, the two teacups on the table were a little strange. Shen Miao shook her head and threw the messy thoughts to the back of her mind. No matter if there was anyone behind the screen or who it was, she had already said what she wanted to say to Su Mingfeng, and with her understanding of Su Mingfeng, this matter should be successful. After sitting in the carriage, Guyu asked, young lady, will eldest young master Su help master in foreign? Jingzhe and Guyu were outside and did not know what Shen Miao and Su Mingfeng were talking about, and only thought that Shen Miao was asking Su Mingfeng for help. However, the relationship between the Su family and the Shen family had always been like that, so he was somewhat worried. Shen Miao nodded her head. I will. In his previous life, the entire Su clan was beheaded because of secretly selling soldiers and horses. Although they were still part of the Tian clan, they couldn't tolerate the Count of Pingnan, an established aristocratic family, but they still had to put on a good show. Other than the evidence of selling military horses, there was another matter that was also recorded as a crime. At the beginning of the 69th year of Mingqi, the military horses that the Count of Pingnan, Su Yu, was in charge of had an illness and even caused a small horse plague. It was just that the Count of Pingnan found a veterinarian from the countryside to control the epidemic. Other than the confidants of the military horses, no one else knew about it. Therefore, no one knew about it. Later on, when Count Pingnan's property was confiscated, this matter was also exposed. Shen Miao was still the Empress and had carefully looked through the dossier on the Count of Pingnan's crimes. Thus she knew where the veterinarian was staying. In fact, even if Shen Miao did not look for Su Mingfeng today, Su Yu would be able to find the vet to control the epidemic when Xiaobo's horse plague spread. The reason why Shen Miao did not let Su Mingfeng tell Su Yu about this matter was to make use of the time difference. Su Mingfeng used other reasons to request Su Yu to submit the memorial, and she also used this condition, which was just right. It's just that. Shen Miao's face sunk. Before Shen Yuan died, he had given the evidence of the Shen family defying the emperor's orders to Fu Xiuyi, so it was definitely not complete. Fu Xiuyi actually started to deal with the Shen family now. And this made Shen Miao feel a trace of nervousness. The current her did not have a complete trump card to contend against Fu Xiuyi. The time was not ripe and there was no opportunity, but it really answered to Xie Jingxing's words, retreat. However, how to retreat was also a problem. To retreat was to retreat, and to retreat in order to advance was also to retreat. What she should be worried about now was how to get out of this unscathed after arranging everything. Because she could not go out for too long and arouse suspicion, Shen Miao quickly returned to the Shun residence. In the Shun residence, everyone saw her return and thought that Shen Miao had complained to Feng and Ning. Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan did not show any signs of returning from the palace. Most likely Shen Gui and Shen Wan had said something, as the rest of the Shen family looked like they were watching a show. She was already used to the Shen family treating the first household as enemies, so Shen Miao did not even look at them and headed back to the western courtyard. Jingzhe and Guyu thought that Shen Miao's mind was heavy tonight, and would most likely sit in front of the table for the entire night like yesterday. Who knew that Shen Miao actually went to bed early after washing up, causing the few maids to look at each other in dismay and became more worried for Shen Miao. Shen Miao laid on the bed and looked at the 4 scented sachets hanging on the carved bedpost before slowly closing her eyes. She had done everything she could. The only thing she could do now was to wait. Wait for the Su family to unite with the other courtiers and wait for Emperor Wen Hui's suspicions to flare up. Oh, in the palace. In Shufeng Palace. It was different from the other magnificent palaces, as Shufeng Palace was considered simple. Even the decorations were just some flowers and plants or paintings. Consort Dong Shu was sitting on the soft couch listening to a tune. The one playing the tune was a young female with a round face and was not considered very beautiful, but the tune she played was rather lively. Consort Dong Shu listened with a smile. Consort Dong Shu was not considered very beautiful, and among the thousands of beauties, she seemed much more ordinary. Even though she was beautiful, she was gentle and did not have any temper. No wonder she was the most unremarkable of the 4 consorts. Chapter 392. At her side there was a young man sitting. He was dressed in splendid clothes and had a handsome appearance. His temperament was somewhat cold, but the smile on his face seemed to be somewhat cordial. He said to Consort Dong Shu, "This song is played well." This person was not anyone else but Consort Dong Shu's son, the 9th prince, Prince Ding Fu Xiuyi. Consort Dong Shu smiled as she looked at Fu Xiuyi and waved her hands. The person who was playing the song suddenly stopped. Consort Dong Shu smiled, "Played well. Take some money." The young lady who was playing the song had a flash of joy on her face and quickly carried the zither down. Everyone in Mingqi's palace knew that the servants in Shufeng Palace were the most comfortable, as Consort Dong Shu was a kind person and treated the servants very generously. For example, at this moment, one only needed to play a group and one would be able to get a generous reward. All withdraw. Consort Dong Shu swept a glance at the other palace people. When the palace people heard this, they also withdrew in a well-behaved manner. In a blink of an eye, there was only Consort Dong Shu and her son left in the middle of the palace. Consort Mother's method of training the servants is getting better and better. Fu Xiuyi smiled. It is better to show favors than to make enemies. Consort Dong Shu said with a smile. How many times has Consort Mother told you? Yes, yes, yes. Fu Xiuyi sighed. Unfortunately, with this son's position, it is much easier to make enemies than to show favors. Hearing this, Consort Dong Shu's smile faded a little and asked, "These few days your imperial father is worried about the formidable great general's matter. Do you have confidence on your end?" Consort Dong Shu had never cared about Fu Xiuyi's matters, as the inner palace should not interfere in politics. Moreover, Emperor Wen Hui had 9 sons and all of them were not easy to deal with. It was better to hide one's incompetence than to show one's incompetence. Now that the time was not clear, Consort Dong Shu was not afraid of being a disfavored consort. Imperial father is concerned about the matter, and naturally would not lift it up heavily or drop it down lightly. Fu Xiuyi said, "If I present the evidence, it will coincide with imperial father's intention and will only go smoothly. I know that you have an idea." Consort Dong Shu shook her head and said lightly, "But Xiaojiu, now the situation is tense, so you better be more careful. Do not claim credit and let them fight. It is not too late for you to take action after they are tired. This son will listen to Imperial Mother's teachings," Fu Xiuyi quickly said. Consort Dong Shu smiled and suddenly thought of something. "The last time Shen Foran brought Shen Miao into the palace, you told me not to let Shen Miao hear our conversation. What happened?" The last time Luo Shuiyan and her mother entered the palace, Fu Xiuyi had instructed Consort Dong Shu not to let Shen Miao be present. Afterwards Consort Dong Shu let Tong Yao bring Shen Miao out. What kind of person does Lady Mother think fifth Shen young lady is? Fu Xiuyi asked. Her looks are not bad. She should be a beauty in the future. However, his personality is too gentle, so he is probably easily bullied. Consort Dong Shu looked at Fu Xiuyi. Previously heard that she was in love with you, but she does not seem to be as unbearable as the rumors say. Although she is not intelligent enough, she is not to the point of being an idiot. Fu Xiuyi smiled faintly. Imperial Mother is such a picky person, yet you can't say anything bad about her? Consort Dong Shu was surprised for a moment. She looked generous on the surface, but in her heart she was a very picky person. Because Fu Xiuyi had reached the age to look at a foreign and he was not bad himself. There were also high-ranking families outside that wanted to marry their daughters over. There were naturally a lot of virtuous females, but Consort Dong Shu could always pick out faults and felt that others were not worthy of her son. And in these words, even though she did not praise Shen Miao, there was no contempt in her words. If one thought about it carefully, there was even some bias towards Shen Miao. Among the young ladies of official families, it was the first time that Consort Dong Shu evaluated a person so generously. Chapter 393. So when Fu Xiuyi reminded her, Consort Dong Shu was also stunned. She was obviously an ordinary young lady. How could she not say anything bad about her? But other than being a little dull, one really did not know what was wrong with her. No desire, no ambition, and her eyes were as calm as a married woman. Consort Dong Shu's heart jumped. This in herself, or rather her disguised self, was it not exactly the same? Consort Mother can also see it. Fu Xiuyi smiled. This Shen young lady is a hidden expert. Consort Dong Shu looked at Fu Xiuyi in puzzlement. You say that she is pretending? At such a young age, one can pretend other things, but one's temper cannot be controlled. Consort Mother. A strange light flashed in Fu Xiuyi's eyes. I have seen her make a fool of herself in public and also saw her shameless expression of love. She was filled with killing intent on the drill ground and shot 3 arrows at the Kai family's gentleman until he could not get off the stage. Now you have seen her silly and dull look. Consort Mother think that with so many looks, which one is the real her? Consort Dong Shu's hand that was holding the teacup paused. How could a person have thousands of looks and each look was lifelike and each look was like one's own temperament? That disguise was too scary. What was even scarier was that she had just reached marriageable age. Fu Xiuyi lowered his head. What he did not say was that at the palace banquet, Shen Miao looked at him with uncontrollable hatred in her eyes. That kind of hatred that went deep into the bone marrow was not the hatred that a young daughter would have when she could not love. That kind of hatred was like one's soul was trembling in anger, and could not wait to tear him apart. There were many points that made one puzzled. Consort Mother, leaving the Shen family is also a variable. The current state of the country cannot be changed anymore. Fu Xiuyi lowered his voice. Young lady of the Shen family, it is not as simple as we think. To cut the weeds, one must eliminate the roots, and it would be best to end it before it starts. So this time the formidable great general cannot escape from this calamity? Consort Dong Shu asked. That is not so. Fu Xiuyi smiled. The Shen family is now the head of the aristocratic families, and if the Shen family is removed, it would only cause more variables. But after taking over the Shen family's power, the Shen family would gradually decline, and when the time is ripe, one can catch them all in one fell swoop. What if there is any change in the middle? Consort Dong Shu looked at him. The Shen family might have other trump cards, so what if they can safely pass through? If they find out that it was you who submitted the memorial, I'm afraid you'll be implicated. Fu Xiuyi shook his head. It was clearly a friendly smile, but his eyes were ruthless, deceiving the sovereign and disobeying his superiors. This crime is already very big. No matter how powerful he is, he can't let the Shen family retreat. It's just that. He lightly said, this was originally a test of mine. Consort Dong Shu was somewhat puzzled. Fu Xiuyi looked at his fingertips. That's right. Previously when Shen Yuan asked him to pay attention to Shen Miao, Fu Xiuyi did not take it to heart. But after a series of things, including the extermination of Prince Yu residents and Shen Yuan's death, it made him gradually realize that what Shen Yuan said might be true. Shen Miao was an unmarried daughter, and no matter what, she would not be able to do such a big thing. There was only one possibility: there was someone behind Shen Miao. The person behind her was so capable that Fu Xiaoyi had no choice but to be on guard. This time something happened to the Shen family, and only Shen Miao was left behind. Naturally, it was his suggestion to Emperor Wen Hui. It was just that Fu Xiaoyi's aim was to see how this fifth Shen young lady of the Shen family, who had hidden so deeply that even he was played in the palm of her hands, would use any method to solve the problem. Who was her helper? But no matter what method was used, Shenxian would not be able to retreat safely. Fu Xiaoyi clenched his fists. How could one spit out the fat meat that was in his mouth? Chapter 394. There was no doubt in the history books that the Shen family was destined to perish in Mingqi. Tonight in the residence of the Marquis of Lineage, it was not peaceful. In the innermost courtyard in the room, Xie Jingxing took off his outer robe and the door opened with a paw sound. The servant trembled as he stood at the door, afraid that he would implicate himself as he lowered his head and said, "Young master." This lowly one could not stop. The Marquis of Lineage Xie Ding stood at the door and was even angrier when he heard it. "Stop? Try and stop me. I am your father." When did the master of the residence of the Marquis of Lineage change? Xie Jingxing, stand properly for me. Xie Jingxing casually swept a glance at Xie Ding and lazily threw his robe on the couch. He sat down on the chair and leaned back, putting on an air of a hedonistic son of rich parents. What is the matter for the Marquis to come here in the middle of the night? It was as if he was treating a stranger. Xie Ding was naturally angered to the point that he was in a complete mess. It was Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao who were following behind Xie Ding, who revealed a look of indignation. But if one looked carefully, there was a glint in their eyes. Xie Chongchao said, "Eldest brother, father usually do his best for you. How can you speak to father like this? There is no etiquette." "None of your business." Xie Jingxing spat out 4 words. Outside, the elegant, noble and arrogant little Marquis Xia was like a ruffian every time he faced Xie Ding and the other two. This made Xie Ding, who was a self-proclaimed scholarly general, feel helpless. "Brat." Xie Ding did not notice Xie Chongchao's livid face and said angrily, "What kind of commander request are you writing?" He slapped the paper in his hand and threw it at Xie Jingxing's face. Xie Jingxing took a look at the paper and raised his eyebrows. If the Marquis is not satisfied, let His Majesty write another one. Coming here in the middle of the night without sleeping is for this matter? Xie Jingxing, what exactly do you want to do? Xie Ding flew into a rage. Do you know what kind of place the northern border is? The commander request is not a joke. You have never commanded the Xie family army before and I have never taught you before. Do you know how to use them? When the words were said, Xie Chongchao and Xie Chongwu's eyes flashed with a trace of darkness. The Xie family army was the most valuable asset of the residence of the Marquis of Lineage and was more valuable than the wealth and glory of the Marquis of Lineage. And Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao also practiced martial arts. But Xie Ding never had the intention to let the two brothers take over the Xie family army, but groomed Xie Jingxing as the successor of the Xie family army. Even if Xie Ding brought the two brothers into officialdom, but once Xie Jingxing really used the Xie family army for himself, even if Xie Chongchao and Xie Chongwu struggled for a lifetime, it would be hard to reach Xie Jingxing's height. So what? Xie Jingxing's lips hooked up into a smile. His eyes swept across the place and there was actually a little bit of evil in them. After using it a lot, it becomes more convenient. No. Xie Ding flatly refused. Come with me to the imperial court tomorrow and make it clear to His Majesty that this commander-in-chief request cannot be accepted. Marquis. Xie Jingxing tilted his head and looked at him, as if he was watching a joke. The commander-in-chief request was requested by me and if I renege on it with His Majesty, if the Marquis wants to see me lose my head, just say it directly. There is no need to learn from others to beat around the bush. When he finished speaking, he looked at Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongwu with a smile that was not a smile. It was clearly saying that Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao did not have good intentions. Both of their expressions stiffened and Xie Chongwu said, Eldest brother, father also has good intentions. The terrain of the northern Jiang is complicated, and if something were to happen, not only your own safety would be difficult to predict, even father would be punished and the entire Xia family army would be shamed. You cannot only think about being in the limelight and not care about the future of the Xia family. The meaning behind his words was that Xie Jingxing was completely biting off more than he could chew, and did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. He wanted to establish a career but did not know how much weight he had and would only be shamed if he went out. Chapter 395. Even Xieding couldn't help but frown. "Don't worry, little brother," Xie Jingxing retorted sarcastically. "Older brother, I will wait for you all to enter officialdom and establish your career in the court and have unlimited glory. At that time we will still have to rely on you to protect the Xie family. The Marquis will be very happy." Now Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongqiao had just entered officialdom, and if one were to talk about walking to that step, based on their abilities, it would take a long time. Xie Jingxing was mocking them for not having good aptitude, and could only rely on the Xie family's relationship to climb up. "You!" Xie Chongqiao was furious and was about to speak when he heard Xieding shouting, "Enough!" Xie Chongqiao and Xie Chongwu immediately did not make a sound, but it was Xie Jingxing who revealed some impatience. "Have the Marquis finished speaking? If finished, then quickly leave. I want to sleep." "Jingxing," Xieding suddenly said tiredly, "after so many years, do you still hate me so much?" He hated her so much that he didn't hesitate to sacrifice his own life to leave the Marquis's mansion. Xieding was now in his 40s but could still be considered as a middle-aged man with a beautiful beard. Even though he was a military general, he was different from Shun Xian's coarse and forthright manner, and had the elegance of a gentleman. When Xieding was young, he was already known as the Confucian general, and he could be considered handsome. Most of the Xie family had inherited Xieding's looks, and even Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongqiao were considered handsome, but compared to Xie Jingxing, there was a huge difference. Princess Yuqing was gentle and elegant, and Xieding was also a gentleman like Jade when he was young, but he gave birth to a Xie Jingxing who had a flourishing appearance, and what was more flourishing was his character. He was frivolous, arrogant, and dissolute. There was simply no one in the world who could do anything to him. He didn't seem to care about anything and was so arrogant that he didn't put anyone in his eyes. With this kind of appearance and temperament, if he were to be placed in the history books, he would probably be considered a legendary romantic figure. But there was nothing anyone could do about it. For example, Xieding. Xieding's hair had already turned white. He said, "Jingxing, do you still hate me?" When he said this, Xieding's voice trembled. He usually hated Xie Jingxing, but at this moment he was like a father helplessly surrendering to his son. Hate? Hate what? Did he hate the fact that he had allowed Madame Fong to marry into the family back then, so that a woman with evil intentions could take advantage of him? Let Princess Yuqing die with hatred and let Xie Jingxing live in such a deformed house? He was clearly in the wrong first, but he was infatuated with her and refused to marry again. There was such an infatuated person who refused to execute Madame Fong, doting on Xie Jingxing in every possible way, trying to use this to atone for her sins? The mistake had been made, but the person was not around. How could the sin be redeemed? Xie Jingxing glanced at him and his gaze sharpened for a moment. However, even if this once all-powerful general showed such fatigue, he was not moved. He had never hated Xieding, he just disdained him. Furthermore, Xie Jingxing said, "Marquis is thinking too much. How would I have that leisure time? I don't have the time to hate you." These words were too hurtful. When Xieding heard this, he unconsciously took 2 steps back, clutching his chest. His face was sorrowful and difficult to understand. It was Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongqiao who were more and more delighted in their hearts. The deeper Xie Jingxing was injured, the more disappointed Xieding would be with Xie Jingxing. Only in this way, there would be a day when the 2 brothers could completely replace Xie Jingxing's position. Like this? Xieding said with difficulty, "Then you go to battle." His voice became lower. "I will explain to the Xie family's army that those people will assist you. You can take the armor in the residence and the heart-protecting mirror." Xieding seemed to have aged 10 years in one night as he looked at Xie Jingxing. "You promise more." Xie Chongqiao and Xie Chongwu supported Xieding out. Before leaving, Xie Chongqiao smiled maliciously at Xie Jingxing. This younger brother will congratulate eldest brother for defeating the enemy and returning triumphantly. But he looked as if he could not wait for Xie Jingxing to die on the battlefield. After Xie Chongwu and Xie Jingxing left, the doors of the room were closed, and under the flickering lights, one did not know when a black-clad person appeared. The black-clad person said, "Master, Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongqiao." "Forget it," Xie Jingxing said. "Now that they are dead, the Marquis of Lin will not let me leave. The Xie family's army only listen to the Marquis of Lin and will not listen to Master's orders." The black-clad person said, "What does Master plan to do? Just a mere Xie family's army. Who would care about them?" Xie Jingxing was somewhat impatient. "How is the princess residence's arrangements?" Replying to Master, "The people placed are all in the dark to protect Her Highness Princess Rong Exine. Is Master not going to bid farewell to Princess Rong Exine?" "No need." Xie Jingxing waved his hands. "This will do." The black-clad person respectfully acknowledged before turning and retreating. In the dim lights, that handsome face with red lips and white teeth had lost its previous unruly and romantic look, and showed some gentleness. Taking off the purple gold robe and only wearing a jade white inner robe, the youth's eyelashes were long and seemed to be looking at the fire, as handsome as a person in a painting. "Hate." He lowered his eyes and smiled faintly. "Everyone in the world will hate me." Chapter 396. There was never a lack of new things in the Ding capital. As long as there was any movement the day before, the news would spread like wildfire the next day. If he were to implicate some famous person, he would naturally be talked about for 3 days and 3 nights. Some of them were discussing these things as a joke, but there were also some who truly felt that it was not worth it for the people they were discussing. In today's liveliness, the person they were talking about was the unparalleled formidable great general of Mingqi. Quelling the Woku pirates, fighting the Xiongnu, fighting in the northwest all year round, not claiming credit, not being arrogant, with outstanding military achievements, protecting the country. He was talking about the Shun family of generals. Ever since old General Shun, the Shun family had relied on their illustrious meritorious service to win prestige among the common people of Mingqi. It was a pity that out of the 3 sons of old General Shun, only the eldest Shun Xian inherited his mantle and continued to walk the path of a military official. Fortunately, a tiger father would not beget a dog son. Shun Xian did not disappoint the name of the formidable great general, and even Shun Xian's son, Shan Qiu, was a brave young general on the battlefield. Brothers fighting a tiger, father and son soldiers going into battle. Shun Xian did not put on airs in the army and charged at the forefront in battle. His union with Luo Shuiyan, the tiger daughter of a family of generals, was hailed as a legend of a generation. The common people of Mingqi respected Shun Xian from the bottom of their hearts, and if there was anything bad, it would be that Shun Xian's daughter did not inherit any of her parents' excellence and was instead an idiot. But even if the daughter was an idiot, when Shun Xian was mentioned, the commoners would always support and chase after him. But now, with the accusation of deceiving the emperor, the people were all dumbfounded. It wasn't a small matter, nor was it a matter of one's house. The first thing he did was to deceive the emperor and defy his superiors. That was a serious crime that could result in the confiscation of one's house. Early in the morning, the officials of the court surrounded the entrance of the Shun residence, saying that they wanted to collect evidence. The commoners only knew that Shun Xian had committed the crime of deceiving the emperor, but they did not know what the crime was and how he had deceived the emperor. How would General Shun deceive the emperor? He's such a good person. Yes, the last time my child was naughty and startled Shun Foran's horse. Not only did Shun Foran not blame us, she even apologized to us. Could it be that your majesty is mistaken about such a good person? Hey, what mistake? I heard that this time it's already a done deal. There's even evidence. Someone whispered. Even though one do not know what it is, one heard that His Highness Prince Ding personally reported it to General Shan. Your Highness Prince Ding? That's right. Think about it. His Highness Prince Ding would definitely not fake it. Perhaps it was because Fifth Shin young lady was in love with His Highness Prince Ding and was humiliated. In order to vent his daughter's anger, General Shun did something that let His Majesty down. It is possible to say so. Poor General Shun's family, they were really harmed by that daughter. The voices of these commoners were not low, and Shan Miao stood at the residence's entrance and could clearly hear it. The people in the mansion all stood at the entrance of the mansion so that the soldiers could enter and search. Shen Yu pretended to be afraid as she hid behind Chan Ro-chiu and looked at Shan Miao sympathetically. Fifth younger sister, how can these people say that about you? What does uncle's actions have to do with you? Shen Miao looked coldly at those fiendish-looking soldiers and smiled when she heard that. Once he was blinded, he would be branded as an idiot who adored Prince Ding for the rest of his life. It was really disgusting. Seeing that Shan Miao did not speak, Shen Yu thought that she had nothing to say and there was a proud look in her eyes, but she stood there without saying a word. After old Shen Foreign was sure that Shen Exine would not implicate her, she was relieved and put on an upright attitude of a matriarch and angrily rebuked. How can eldest lady do such a treacherous thing? My Shen family has been loyal for generations and there is no such shameless person. Simply throwing the Shen family's face. If the general was still here, he would not see eldest lady spoil the family's reputation. Chapter 397. When Shen Miao heard it, her heart moved and she looked at old Shen Foreign. What is grandmother saying? Father is also a member of the Shen family, and the Shen family and father are connected as one. How can one not care about father at this time? Previously, when father was praised by the emperor, did grandmother not say that it was the Shen family's fortune to have such a male? Words that are said are like water that is spilled. Did grandmother forget this time? When the commoners who were watching the bustle outside heard it, their gazes shot towards old Shen Foreign. The formidable great general had outstanding military merits, and when he was bestowed by the emperor, old Shen Foreign did not say that. They were one family and should share prosperity and misfortune together. Why was it that old Shen Foreign's appearance was that one could only share riches and not trials and tribulations? Once one saw that others were in trouble, one could not wait to draw a clear line. What was wrong with that? Old Shen Foreign was also aware that everyone was looking at her with unkind eyes and flew into a rage out of shame, but did not know how to continue and could only look towards Chan Ro-chiu at the side. Shen Gui and Shan Wan had gone to court and the only one who could take charge was Chan Ro-chiu. Chan Ro-chiu smiled. Fifth older sister, how would old Foreign have the meaning that you said? Old Foreign was just angered. You also know that our Shen family has always been upright people, and that deceiving the monarch. If the old general knew of it, he would also blame your father. For your father to do such a thing, would the Shen family be like this in the future? When old Shen Foreign saw Chan Ro-chiu's support, her foundation became firmer, and she saw Chan Ro-chiu more pleasing to the eye. She nodded her head, correct. Your father committed a mistake and one is not allowed to say it? Shen Dongling and Wan Yinyang stood at the side, and since they did not have the authority to speak, they only quietly watched and did not speak. Shen Miao said, so to speak, could it be that grandmother wants to draw a clear line with my father, and expel him from the Shen family before letting it go? When she said that, Chan Ro-chiu knew that it was bad in her heart. Before she could stop it, she saw old Shen Foreign's eyes lighting up and she said with righteous indignation, such an unfilial descendant, naturally one must be expelled from the Shen family. If grandmother is really so heartless, my father is still in prison and grandmother does not help to deal with it. Shen Miao's eyes hung down. Seeing Shan Miao bowing her head to show weakness, old Shen Foreign felt a burst of comfort in her heart. A few days ago, everything was not going well for her because of the first branch. The grievance in her heart was swept away at this moment. The more carefree she was, the more righteous her tone became. The Shen family has been loyal for generations, and even if one were to bear the infamy of being heartless, this old one would still make this decision for master. This kind of person cannot enter my Shen family's ancestral hall. From today onwards, Shen Exine and his family will be expelled from the Shen family. Old Shen Foreign was speaking carefreely but did not see Chan Ro-chiu's face change in color. Even though it was natural to draw a clear line of relations, but for old Shen Foreign to do it so clearly, it was really too stupid. In the eyes of the commoners were not fools and would not stand on the side of the Shen residents. Thinking of this, Chan Ro-chiu smiled apologetically to Shan Miao. Fifth older sister, old Foreign does not mean this. It was only because he was angered by his eldest brother that he said that. Fifth lady, after a few days, when old madam's anger subsides, She won't be like this anymore. Shen Yu somewhat did not understand why her mother would say that. Was it not good to let old Shen Furan drive Shen Miao out? Now that Shen Xian and the rest were carrying the crime of deceiving the monarch, even if they were to rely on their years of meritorious deeds to avoid death, it would be hard to escape punishment and they would definitely be in dire straits. To drive out this dire family, perhaps they would not even have a place to stay. Just thinking about it made one happy. Third Shen need not say any more. Shen Miao said loudly, since old Furan values the Shen family's reputation so much that she does not even place familial affection in her eyes, then what is there for me to fear? It is better to separate from here and be at peace with each other, so as to not spoil the Shen family's reputation. She said it sarcastically. It is just that it would be difficult to move in such a short period of time. When the Lord Army is done searching, I will pack my luggage and move out once father and mother return. I will not tarnish the Shen family by a single bit. Chapter 398. She spoke angrily. At first glance, she seemed like a proud young lady who had been forced to speak indiscriminately. However, if one listened carefully, there was no room for negotiation at all. Shen Xian and wife were people who loved their daughter dearly. If they knew that in the time that they entered the palace, their daughter was forced to the point where she was almost swept out of the Shen family, one feared that there would be a score to be settled. The surrounding commoners were in an uproar. They never expected to see such a good show here. It was just that old Shen Furan's attitude was really displeasing, and on the contrary it was the fifth young lady of the Shen family who was called an idiot. She was delicate and pretty but was forced to such a situation. One could not help but feel sympathy and lean towards Shen Miao's side. Chen Roqiu was secretly shocked and looked at Shen Miao without speaking, as it was too late to say anything now. To quarrel in front of so many commoners within half a day, the entire Ding capital would know about this matter. Even though it was said that the Shen family and Shen Xian had drawn a clear line of relationship and it was the Shen family who benefited, but Chen Roqiu had a faint uneasy feeling in her heart. Shen Miao had been leading everyone by the nose. No matter if it was to let old Shen Furan say that Shen Xian was expelled from the Shen family, or now everyone's sympathy was biased towards Shen Miao's side. But why did Shen Miao want to do that? Why did it look like Shen Miao borrowed old Shen Furan's words to urge Shen Xian to get rid of the Shen family? Chen Roqiu could not help but think of the first household separation from the family a few days ago. Naturally, old Shen Furan was not willing to let the first household leave with the treasures, but Shen Xian and wife's decision could not be changed. At that time they agreed to look at other residences, but who knew that such a thing would happen? He thought that the separation of the family would be left unsettled. He didn't expect that it would be brought up again. Moreover, under the watchful eyes of so many people, it would be impossible for him to go back on his words in the future. Old Shen Furan was dissatisfied with Chen Roqiu helping to intercede for Shen Miao. But after seeing that Shen Miao did not know what was good for her, she said that there was not a trace of relationship with the Shen family before she was satisfied. With a cold snort, he ignored the disdainful gazes of the commoners outside and went in with his servant girl. Chen Roqiu hesitated for a moment before holding Shen Yu's hand and followed in. Wan Yinyang also wanted to follow in but saw Shen Dongling release her hand and walk straight to her side. Fifth sister. Shen Dongling called out to her. This seemed to be the first time Shen Dongling called her after leaving the courtyard. Shen Miao's eyes hung down and lightly answered, "Third older sister." "Fifth sister, don't worry." Shen Dongling looked soft and weak, but her smile was warm. "First uncle will definitely be fine. Eldest uncle is not a person who will deceive the monarch. The truth will eventually come to light." Shen Miao's expression did not change and said, "Many thanks to third older sister." Shen Dongling then smiled and turned to the stunned Wan Yinyang's side and pulled her towards the door. "Young lady," Jingzhe came over and asked, "what is third young lady's meaning?" Just now, with Shen Miao's arrogance and willful ruckus, it almost indicated that her relationship with the rest of the people in the Shen residence was broken. This Shen Dongling came to express goodwill. Was she not afraid that old Shen Furan would blame her? Shen Miao did not speak and looked at the back view of Shen Dongling and Wan Yinyang leaving and shook her head thoughtfully. Inside the door, seeing that there was no one around, Wan Yinyang whispered, "Linger, what happened to you just now? How dare you express goodwill to fifth young lady?" If Old Foreign saw it, return and tell your father. Shen Gui was also not pleasing to the eyes of the first household, so it would be strange if Shen Gui would be happy when Shen Dongling rushed to please the first household. Do not worry, Yinyang. Shen Dongling smiled. They will not be able to fight against fifth younger sister. What? Wan Yinyang was startled. Shen Dongling pursed her lips and pulled Wan Yinyang forward. Do not ask anymore. Let's go back. Such a big matter happened to the Shen family that even the commoners were alarmed, so naturally the previous court's anger was quite heavy. Chapter 399. In the throne room, Emperor Wenhui sat on the dragon throne and his face was so gloomy that water could drip out. Looking at the crowd of officials in the hall, he threw the booklet in his hands at the nearest official's face. That official's face was hit by the booklet, but he did not dare to say a word and immediately knelt down. Shen Xian and wife had not left the palace since Shen Qiu entered. Thus the outside did not know what happened, but the officials were well aware that Shen Xian and wife were obviously detained by Emperor Wenhui. Why would one detain an official? This was something that one did not even need to think about. This official had a problem and the emperor wanted to deal with him. This kind of simple logic was something that all the officials understood. Generally speaking, it was better to keep silent. But today Emperor Wenhui's expression was somewhat strange. Count of Pingnan, you speak? Emperor Wenhui called out. The Count of Pingnan. Su Yu's body quivered and the other officials started to look at him. Su Yu thought of the words that Su Mingfeng said to him last night and no longer hesitated. He took out a booklet from his sleeves and respectfully handed it to the eunuch beside the emperor, who then handed it to Emperor Wenhui. Replying to Your Majesty, this official also think that the formidable great general's action is presumptuous and did not put the imperial family in his eyes. Pleading Your Majesty to punish Shen Xian and execute his 9 generations. Execute his 9 generations? It was still all right for those officials who had good relations with Su Yu, but when those officials who did not have any political relations with Su Yu heard it, their eyes were filled with surprise. All along, the Count of Pingnan had always been gentle in the court and could be considered as a good person, who knew that the moment he opened his mouth, he would want Shen Xian's life. These words were too heavy. Emperor Wenhui's hand trembled as he took the booklet and his eyes stared at Su Yu. Su Yu raised his head and had an impassioned look. Reporting to Your Majesty. The Marquis of Lin and Xieding, who had been silent all along, also said, Shen Xian has his own troops and even dared to defy Your Majesty's orders. One fear that he already had the intention to rebel. This official also agrees with Su Daren's words to execute the 9 generations of the Shen family. Everyone's eyes looked towards Xieding and Su Yu. Everyone knew that the Su and Xia families had a close relationship and the Shen family and these two families had a clear distinction. Now that something had happened to Shen Xian, the Su and Xia families were like grasshoppers on a rope. They would definitely jump up and step on them a few times before they would be satisfied. Emperor Wenhui's eyes were cloudy and uncertain. Originally, he was extremely satisfied with the evidence that Fu Xiui sent over. He had been eyeing the Shen family, this fat piece of meat, covetously, but he had not been able to find an opportunity. With Fu Xiuyi's evidence, no matter what, it was a very simple matter to take back the Shen family's military power. Who knew that early in the morning, when this matter was mentioned in court, the ministers all expressed that Shen Xian would be severely punished. Shen Xian had been fighting in the northwestern region all year round, and did not have a deep relationship with these officials in court. Emperor Wenhui had long expected that there were many people who thought that Shen Xian was wrong, but he did not expect that it would be to this extent. But there were very few who pleaded for Shen Xian. The emperor's heart was full of suspicions, and if there were many officials that interceded for Shen Xian, Emperor Wenhui would most likely suspect that Shen Xian was privately close to the officials. But if there were more people who impeached Shen Xian, Emperor Wenhui would be more at ease with Shen Xian. An official who had a rebellious heart would not set up so many enemies for himself. If one were to say that these officials impeaching Shen Xian made Emperor Wenhui hesitate, then the Count of Pingnan and the Marquis of Linan's 9-clan execution made Emperor Wenhui suspicious. The Shen family, Su family and Xia family were all thorns in Emperor Wenhui's heart. Not to say how these officials were, but just based on the prestige and military power that these large clans had, It would make Emperor Wen Hui sleep uneasy. How could the side couch allow others to sleep soundly? Emperor Wen Hui did not allow the existence of a family that was above the imperial power. Chapter 400. And the Su and Xie family were ropes that were twisted together. It was fortunate that the Shen family and these two families were like fire and water, otherwise they would really become a big trouble for Emperor Wen Hui. If it was really as what the Su and Xie families said, and the Shen family's 9 clans were exterminated, then within the Ming Qi's lands, there would no longer be any power that could contend against the Su and Xie families. If he allowed the Su and Xie families to grow stronger, his throne would become even more unstable. For the first time, Emperor Wen Hui felt that it was difficult to dismount the tiger. He only wanted to take back a part of Shen Xian's military power as the Shen family could still keep Su Xie in check, but now there was no one who was willing to speak up for Shen Xian. Emperor Wen Hui only felt that his head was hurting. He asked slowly, 9 familial extermination? Normally, the officials would be able to see that the emperor's expression was not right. However, Xieding did not know what was wrong with him today. He stiffened his neck and said, yes. Emperor Wen Hui closed his eyes, and when he looked at Xieding again, it was as if he was looking at Xieding's wolf's ambition through his skin. Ziyu was a little worried, but he didn't show it on his face. He still looked like Xieding's words made sense. Finally, a junior general stepped out and said, even though General Shen had acted willfully and recklessly this time, but the crime does not warrant death. Previously you had also made great contributions to the court and can atone for your crimes. His Majesty is benevolent and hoped that the Shen family's army has been fighting on the battlefield for many years, protecting the country and giving a lenient sentence. This young general had a good relationship with Shen Xian. He probably saw that the situation here was disadvantageous to Shen Xian, so he couldn't stand it anymore and spoke up for Shen Xian. Emperor Wen Hui had been waiting for the person to say these words, but one did not know if it was because Shen Xian's popularity was too bad that no one spoke. When this young general opened his mouth, Emperor Wen Hui's eyebrows stretched out and said, beloved official is right. Even though General Shen is guilty this time, he had made meritorious services in the past. If one were to say that the 9 generations of one's family were to be executed, it would seem that Zhan do not remember old feelings. Your Majesty, you mustn't. So you quickly knelt on the ground. General Shen can even do things like deceiving the emperor. One does not know what will happen in the future. Xieding also hurriedly said, yes, yes. Your Majesty, please reconsider. The more both of them said so, the more suspicious Emperor Wen Hui felt. He did not even look at the both of them and spoke to that young general, or rather to the entire court's civil and military officials. When old General Shen was alive, he also accompanied the late emperor through life and death. The Shen family had been loyal for generations. The formidable great General Shen Xian used to be incomparably brave, and returned after defeating Shi Rong at the end of the year. It could be considered as atoning for his crimes. Zhen is not a tyrant. I will implicate the 9 generations. Shen Xian's family are innocent. Your Majesty is wise. The young general hurriedly knelt down again. Emperor Wen Hui waved his hands and said, it is just that Shen Xian is like this, so Zhan still want to punish him. Pass down the orders to take back the Shen family's military tally, and punish Shen Xian's salary for 1 year. The Shen family's army will only be allocated to the front for him to transfer, and the rest will be merged into the imperial army. Everyone gasped, and their gazes were a little strange. One could say that Emperor Wen Hui was cruel, but he did not harm the lives of the Shen family. It could be said that Emperor Wen Hui was gentle, and wanted to snatch the tiger tally from the start. The tiger tally commanded the 3 armies, and to a military general, if the tiger tally was taken away, it meant that the soldier had lost his life on the battlefield. And the front of the Shen family's army were just some insignificant cookery soldiers, but the proper Shen family's army was merged into the imperial army. That was to say, the troops that Shen Xian had trained for so many years were all used as wedding clothes for the imperial family. The ministers were all distressed. No wonder Emperor Wen Hui was so generous in his words. Emotions were already grasping the other's lifeline. Even if Shen Xian escaped this calamity, this formidable great general would only be left with an empty shell, so what kind of deterrence was there? To keep the reputation of the Shen family, it was only to check and balance the other aristocratic families. Chapter 401. After Emperor Wenhui finished speaking, he waved his hands in annoyance and said, "End of court." He turned around and flicked his sleeves. Following his words, it would not be long before Shen Xian and wife who were under house arrest and Shan Qiu would be released from the palace. It was just that at that time, one did not know if Shen Xian and wife would be able to rejoice when they were stripped of their military power. Emperor Wenhui flicked his sleeves and left the officials looking at each other in dismay. No one had expected that such a grand and spectacular matter would be handled so simply. Could be said that it was simple. Quietly one would become a lone commander. Would Shen Xian be so angry that he would curse one's mother? Suyu patted the soil on his knees and stood up. Coincidentally, he saw that Xieding had also tidied up his clothes. He walked over to Xieding and whispered, "What happened to you just now? Why did you suddenly speak?" Even though Suyu had obtained Su Mingfeng's words and promised to report against Shen Xian, he did not want to get his good friend involved in this muddy water. The situation that the Xie family was facing was more complicated than his, and if one was not good, he would implicate the Xie family. Suyu really wanted to blame himself to death. So Suyu informed the matter to his colleagues that he was on good terms with but did not tell Xieding. He did not expect that today Xieding would actually follow along with his words, and was almost angered by Emperor Wenhui. Xieding shook his head. "From what you said, I know that you have other ideas. Since you want to help Shen Xian, then I will conveniently help, but it is only to help you." Xieding was an old fox that had been in the court for many years. Compared to Shen Xian, who only knew how to fight, Xieding was better at the interests of the court. He could see that Suyu was doing the opposite to help Shen Xian, so he took the opportunity to add fuel to the fire. Hearing this, Suyu was somewhat helpless. He felt that his good friend's casual character was the same as Xieding's son. Xie Jingxing. Thinking of Xie Jingxing, Suyu was suddenly surprised. "Oh yes, I heard from Mingfeng that Jingxing requested for the commander's position. Is it true?" Mingfeng also know about it. Xieding shook his head and sighed. "Yes, it is true. Could it be that Jingxing is crazy?" Suyu said incredulously. "The northern Jiang is not a place to play around. Old Xia, are you really not worried? What's the use of me not being at ease? What's the use of not being at ease?" Xieding was helpless. When have I ever been able to interfere with something he has decided on? Now I only hope that he is safe. This is all my fault and only I can pay for it now. Naturally, this isn't your fault. Hearing this, Suyu felt a little sad. One wrong step after another. All these years, Xieding had been tormented because of what happened in the past. His conscience was uneasy, and his son was not close to him. As an outsider, he felt sad, and Xieding felt even worse. He diverted the topic. Heard that the report on Shen Xian's crimes was submitted by the 9th Prince, Prince Ding. Why do I not see him today? It seems that His Majesty sent him to the Ministry of Works to inspect. Xieding frowned and said, "When he learns of this, I wonder what he will think." "What else can I think?" Suyu sneered. "I've already taken everything I want. It doesn't matter if I keep those heads or not." This was the first time Xieding had seen Suyu like this. He was somewhat surprised and asked, "That's right, you still haven't said why did you suddenly help Shen Xian? When did you have a friendship with the Shen family?" Suyu looked at the people who had walked far away, and when there was no one around, he then whispered to Xieding, "Ai, how is it me? It is my son Mingfeng. He told me at night that the current Shen family is just an opening for His Majesty, and after the Shen family, it would be inevitable that it would be my Su family." The matter in court quickly spread throughout the residence. Emperor Wenhui left Shen Xian's entire family alive and only gave orders on their positions, which made the commoners sigh that the imperial family was still very benevolent. Not only that, seeing how Emperor Wenhui was so lenient to Shen Xian, everyone guessed that Shen Xian's prestige had not decreased and his weight in the imperial family's heart was quite heavy, so it seemed that it was not as bad as the rumors. The layman would watch the bustle while the expert would see the artistry. The commoners did not understand, but the officials could see it clearly. Without the military power, the Shen family was like a tiger without its teeth. It had an empty appearance and no longer had the prestige of the past. In the Shun residence, Shen Gui and Shan Wan were talking about the matter. Even though it was not as severe as they had imagined, they were very satisfied with the military power being taken back. This meant that Shen Xian's reputation and prestige was much lower than theirs. In the western courtyard, when Jingzhe told Shen Miao the news, Shen Miao had just finished her lunch. "Young lady." Jingzhe looked at Shen Miao's leisurely appearance and her heart calmed down before asking, "Young lady is not worried at all, is it that? Actually, without military power, it is not as bad as what the outside say." Shen Miao wiped her mouth with a handkerchief. "No need to be afraid. If it is yours, one would not be able to run away, and if it is not yours, one would not be able to snatch it." Chapter 402. On the day that Shen Xian left the palace and returned to the residence, Shen Miao personally went to the city walls outside the palace to receive him. The rest of the Shun family were naturally dissatisfied with this ending, especially old Shun Foreign. She thought that Shen Xian would be unlucky this time, and did not think that Shen Xian's life would be spared. But hearing that Shen Gui told her what it meant for the military power to be confiscated, old Shun Foreign became happy again. Shen Xian, who had his military power confiscated, at least in terms of influence in his career, he could no longer be compared to Shen Gui and Shen Wan. Old Shun Foreign was short-sighted and did not think that the Shun family was now one. When one looked at the Shun family from the outside, naturally they would look at Shen Xian's reputation. With the loss of Shen Xian's reputation, how would the Shun family be as awe-inspiring as it was in the past? But old Shun Foreign most likely did not care. In her heart, the Shen Gui and Shan Wan that she gave birth to were many times stronger than Shen Xian. If it was not for the old general's favoritism, how would Shen Xian have today's results? Since Shen Gui was in dire straits, it was not bad to take this opportunity to expel Shen Xian's branch from the Shun family. It was just that how this family would be divided was also a clever method. In the Shun residence, old Shun Foreign had the idea of separating from the family, but Shen Miao did not put it in her heart at all. Since things had reached such a stage, it was better to go according to what she had thought before. It was one thing for the emperor to take back the military power, but the Shun family without the military power was indeed nothing to fear. If they continued to stay here, the Shun family would have a lot of enemies, and eventually Shen Xian's branch would be forced into a desperate situation. Still need to retreat. Without any reason, Shen Miao remembered Xie Jingxing's warning to her that day. This retreat word was indeed the only way out for the Shun family. He could see the key point with one glance. The carriage stopped at the corner of the palace walls so that it would not be seen by others. Adding insult to injury, those colleagues of Shen Xian who did not agree with him on politics and those who were watching the bustle would not necessarily be guarding the palace doors. Shen Miao was clearer than anyone else what kind of conduct the Fu family had. They wanted to put on a broad-minded attitude, but secretly planned to let the other party suffer losses. Shen Xian had an illustrious reputation, and now that his tiger tally had been taken away from him, many people would be happy to see this desolate appearance. Shen Miao had suffered a lot of losses in her previous life, and in Mingqi, she did not have any face left. She could endure the humiliation herself but could not endure her family being treated like this. They could only stop the carriage here and wait for Shen Xian to come out and take them away. Just as he was thinking, he heard Mo Qing's low shout from outside, "Stop!" A gust of wind blew in and Shen Miao's eyes blurred as the curtain of the carriage was lifted, and there was one more person in the spacious carriage. Guyu cried out in fright and Jingzhe covered her mouth. Mo Qing's somewhat flustered voice sounded, "Young lady." Shen Miao looked at the person opposite her. On top of the carriage, the young man was dressed in a dark red official robe. His peach blossom eyes were flirtatious, and his thin lips were slightly curled up. His originally serious and upright official robe looked beautiful and delicate in it, making people unable to take their eyes off him. Mo Qing, withdraw. Shen Miao reprimanded in a low voice. But Mo Qing's voice tightened through the curtain of the carriage. That person's action was too fast and he could not stop it at all. It was absolutely impossible to let a stranger and Shen Miao in the same carriage. "You cannot beat him," Shen Miao calmly said to the outside before looking at Jingzhe and Guyu. "Both of you should also go out. Guard the side of the carriage." Jingzhe and Guyu had seen Xie Jingxing before and knew that Xie Jingxing and Shan Miao had some friendship, but it was unclear to what extent the friendship had reached. To say it was intimate, both of them would occasionally oppose each other, but to say it was enemies, how would Shan Miao be so lenient to the enemy? But with a few experiences, Jingzhe and Guyu also expected that Xie Jingxing would not harm Shan Miao. Shan Miao was so arrogant to let Xie Jingxing stay in the carriage, so it should be to confirm this point. Jingzhe and Guyu did not say anything and got off the carriage. Chapter 403. In an instant, there were only Xie Jingxing and Shan Miao left in the carriage. Heard that the Marquis of Lin and spoke out to help in court yesterday. Many thanks to little Marquis. Shan Miao said. Xie Ding helped Suyu to impeach Shen Xian. On the surface it was an impeachment, but in fact it was giving Shen Xian a way out. It was alright if others could not see it, but Shan Miao believed that with Xie Jingxing's skills as an old fox, it was impossible for him not to see it. Sure enough, when her half-true and half-false words came out, Xie Jingxing's lips hooked up into a smile and lazily leaned back as he loosened his arms. It is the Marquis of Linan's own idea and has nothing to do with me. Oh. Shan Miao looked at him and smiled. Then little Marquis came uninvited to my carriage. Is it not to hear my thanks? She purposely emphasized the words my carriage. It was obvious that she was very angry with Xie Jingxing for doing this kind of uninvited things. Xie Jingxing stared at her. You intend to let Shen Xian retreat to the northwest region? Luo family? Shan Miao's heart jumped and she looked at Xie Jingxing without speaking. She was thinking like this. Xie Jingxing had given her a retreat route, but she did not want to passively retreat like this. She had not even played this game of chess in Mingqi, so how could she lose the initiative now? Her ambition and her revenge had not even started, and if she was to be suppressed, naturally it would not do. It was not a big deal to have the military power confiscated. What Shen Xian's side valued the most was not the tiger tally that the Fu family thought, but their ability to lead troops into battle. To be able to bring out one Shen family's army, it did not mean that one could not bring out another Shen family's army. And in the currently confiscated military power, Shen Yuan's people had already mixed into the Shen family's army, and that was also Fu Xiuyi's people. It was too tiring to lead such an army and guard against people shooting arrows from the back at any time. Unless one led another clean army. Starting over, the Shen family's military power was gone, but Luo Shuiyan's maiden family, the Luo family, still had it. It was just that the Luo family's military power was not as good as the Shen family's, and the matter of defending the border was not good enough. Thus it did not attract the attention of others. Shan Miao had the idea of the Luo family. She wanted to turn the Luo family into another Shen family's army. A trump card that no one knew about. Wasn't the Fu family worried all day that Shen Xian would raise his army and rebel? She would show it to the Fu family. It was just that. This kind of secretive thought was actually exposed by Xie Jingxing's sharp eyes. When her thoughts were exposed, the moment of panic made Shan Miao's face flash a trace of embarrassment. If Xie Jingxing knew of her thoughts, this person, the tragic hero who had left a thick and colorful stroke in the history of Mingqi, what would he do? Threaten her? Tell on her? Or kill her? However, he probably wouldn't have such a chance. What kind of person was Shan Miao? She had experienced the most difficult times in her previous lifetime, and even if she was momentarily shocked, she would quickly suppress the emotions in her heart. She thought that Xie Jingxing was about to leave for the northern borderline, and if this trip to the northern borderline was to follow the route of the previous lifetime, Xie Jingxing would die. He would end up with 1,000 arrows piercing his heart. The deadline of 10 days was almost up. Fate was a hand that could flip the clouds and rain. Xie Jingxing's hands and eyes were omnipotent. So what if his mind was treacherous? In the end, he would not be able to escape that ending. Shan Miao looked up at Xie Jingxing. Xie Jingxing was really good looking. In the previous lifetime when Shan Miao stayed in the 6 palaces, she had seen a lot of talented and handsome youths. Even Fu Xiuyi, whom she had been pining for, did not have this kind of grace. Long eyebrows that slanted to the temples, a high nose bridge, thin lips that were slightly raised but very rosy. His smile always had a bit of evilness. His handsomeness was somewhat overbearing, with a clear outline that was hard and cold, but he had a pair of dark and bright peach blossom eyes. When he looked at people, he was affectionate but ruthless, giving an illusion of gentleness. Chapter 404. It was just that under this person's cynical and unruly appearance, only one knew what kind of black heart he had. Xie Jingxing was still a youth and had a youthful handsomeness and heroic spirit, but today he was wearing a dark red court robe which made him look more mature. Fu Ming once read a section of Ming Qi's Xie family's history and lamented, "A young talent, an eternal character, to die young, the sorrow of Ming Qi." One could see the high evaluation of Xie Jingxing. When Shen Miao really noticed Xie Jingxing, it was already later and she only saw him from afar at the palace banquet. She vaguely felt that he was a very good-looking young man, but Fu Xiuyi's attitude towards him was not warm. Today's Xie Jingxing was still a miserable youth. Who would have thought that it would not be long before this handsome smiling youth would lose his life on the battlefield? There was an additional trace of pity in Shen Miao's eyes. Being reborn, she was not a good-hearted person, but Fu Ming and Wan Yu had praised him before, so there was an additional trace of appreciation. Her uncertain and sometimes vigilant and sometimes sympathetic gaze made Xie Jingxing somewhat inexplicable. Suddenly he thought of the first time he saw Shan Miao at the entrance of Guangwentang. Shen Miao also used such a pitiful expression to look at him. Xie Jingxing asked thoughtfully, "You pity me?" This person was simply better at observing one's words and body language than her. Shen Miao secretly thought in her heart, but a smile floated on her face. What qualifications do I have to pity others? Xie Jingxing made a N sound as if he felt that what she said was reasonable. But he suddenly reached out to lift the curtain of the carriage. This was a remote place and no one would come over. Lifting a corner of the curtain of the carriage, one could see the high palace walls. Shen Miao's gaze could not help but be somewhat distant. She had lived in the palace for so many years and was reborn, but she was still unable to escape this fate. But she did not regret it. What was the purpose of living? The dead could no longer be revived. Living was naturally to take revenge. Shen Miao looked carefully, as if she wanted to engrave every piece of the palace walls in her eyes. When Xie Jingxing saw it, his lips curled up. "You want to live in?" Shen Miao was slightly startled. "If you want to live in, I can help you," Xie Jingxing said. His tone was inexplicable, but his smile seemed to hide something deeper. "When the time comes, how will you thank me? If little Marquis is able to burn down this palace, perhaps I will be endlessly grateful to you," Shen Miao answered. Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows in surprise. "I thought you wanted to be a noble person." "I want to be a noble person." Shen Miao turned her head and looked at him with a sarcastic smile. "But not the kind of noble person that you are talking about. They are nobles who are even nobler than nobles." "You want to be the Empress?" "Empress?" Shen Miao's eyes were slightly absent-minded. She also wore court attire and had a full head of phoenix hairpins. During the coronation ceremony of the Emperor and Empress, the scene was boundless. The officials knelt down and the common people cheered. She was the mother of the world. At that time she thought she had everything she wanted. But now it seemed that the higher one climbed, the more painful the fall would be. Empress? It was just an empty reputation. "It is easy to be an empress," Xie Jingxing plainly said. "It is difficult to be an emperor." The winds and clouds of Ming Qi were gathering and the 9 princes each had their own merits. Even the crown prince's position was not very stable. Who knew which hand the imperial seal would fall into in the future? For a noble family to marry their daughter to a prince, was it not a gamble? A gamble for one's future? Riches were sought in danger and greed was a human's instinct. A general success was built on the bones of 10,000 people. The winner was king and the loser was a bandit. Since a female had chosen the wrong person, naturally she had to follow. Xie Jingxing casually said, "Who did you choose?" Chapter 405. He was asking her which prince she favored, which one did she want to marry, and which one did she want to support. "Little Marquis, who do you think has a better future?" Shen Miao asked back. "Looking at one's physiognomy, no one has a future." Xie Jingxing's words were horrifying to hear. "What about you? Then look for someone with a future." "Then what do you think of me?" Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows and asked. Most likely his words were to tease Shen Miao as he was not serious about it. Little Marquis also does not have a future. Shen Miao looked at him seriously. Xie Jingxing was choked by Shen Miao's words. Even though he was not angry, he was somewhat displeased. He thought that all the females that he had met adored him, and all the males that he had met were afraid of him, but Shen Miao did not adore him, nor was she afraid of him. She even kept stroking the tiger's fur. Was he too kind to Shen Miao? So it made Shen Miao feel that he was a person with a good temper? What exactly does little Marquis want to say? If you are done, then quickly leave. Shen Miao impolitely asked him to leave. It would not be good to be seen and misunderstood by others. Misunderstanding? Xie Jingxing's eyes flashed with a smile as he deliberately said softly, "What misunderstanding?" A lecher taking advantage of a young female from a good family. Shen Miao did not even blink as she answered neatly. She could see that Xie Jingxing was shameless in the matter of despising etiquette and rules. Even though Xie Jingxing had seen all kinds of orioles and swallows, he was somewhat dizzy from Shen Miao's valiant words. He coughed twice and sat up straight. He did not tease Shen Miao anymore and said, "Retreat to the northwestern region, and the faster the better. The longer it drags on, it would not be good for Shen Xian." Shen Miao looked up at him as she did not expect that Xie Jingxing would remind her of such a sentence. After all, she did not want to go up against Xie Jingxing, and it was already very good that Xie Jingxing did not have any hostility towards her. "Many thanks," Xie Jingxing said. "It would be best if Shen Xian could leave the Ding capital before I set off." Shen Miao was somewhat helpless. That would also need to succeed. Not everyone had the same ability as Xie Jingxing. Shen Miao always felt that the background that Xie Jingxing relied on did not seem to be the residence of the Marquis of Lineage, and was even above the residence of the Marquis of Lineage. But in Mingqi, other than the imperial family, what else was there that was more powerful than the residence of the Marquis of Lineage? And the imperial family and Xie Jingxing were now opposing each other. Shen Miao could not guess. Xie Jingxing paused for a moment and suddenly lifted the curtain of the carriage and flew out. He came and left quickly, and before Shen Miao could react, she heard someone calling from outside, "Foreign master, eldest young master." Shen Miao lifted the curtain of the carriage and saw Shen Xian and wife and Shan Qiu walking over from the corner of the city gates. When she saw Jingzhe and Guyu, she was surprised for a moment. Shen Miao looked around again and did not find any trace of Xie Jingxing. She thought that this person was very alert and his skills were good. To appear and disappear so mysteriously, he could be the ancestor of the gentleman on the beam. Luo Shuiyan saw Jingzhe and walked over quickly, just in time to see Shen Miao jumping down the carriage. After not seeing for a few days, Shen Xian and wife and Shan Qiu had become a lot more haggard. Shen Miao had seen the imperial family's methods before. Sometimes when one had not decided on how to deal with a person, house arrest could wear down a person's willpower. Shen Xian's family were all martial people and had firm willpower, but to leave Shen Miao in the residence, it would inevitably make one think more. Luo Shuiyan took a few steps forward and pulled Shen Miao's hands to size her up. "Jiao Jiao. Was there anyone who made things difficult for you these few days?" Shen Miao shook her head. Luo Shuiyan then gave a sigh of relief. Shan Qiu asked, "Why did younger sister not stay in the residence and ran over here?" "Heard that father and mother returned to the residence today and feared that there would not be a horse carriage, thus came over to receive." Shen Miao smiled. Chapter 406. Shen Xian moved his lips, wanting to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. He knew that there were a lot of people watching the show, and Shen Miao's action was to avoid the eyes and ears of others, and it was very considerate. It was just that he had promised to protect his wife and child, but now his tiger tally had been snatched away by someone else. How could he not feel depressed? He silently boarded the carriage, and Luo Shuiyan did not want Shen Miao to worry, so she also pulled Shen Miao into the carriage. Jingzhe and the rest sat in the carriage at the back, and there was only Shen Miao's family in the front carriage. "Mother, what did His Majesty say?" Shen Miao asked. Luo Shuiyan hesitated for a moment, then smiled and said, "It's nothing. It's just a misunderstanding." Shen Miao said, "The tiger tally was taken away. How can it be a misunderstanding?" Shen Qiu was surprised for a moment and subconsciously looked at Shen Exan. Having the tiger tally taken away, the one who was the most angry should be Shen Exan. He also did not know where the mistake was. The only possibility was that there was a problem within the Shen family's army. Otherwise, who would know about the matter of disobeying orders and massacring the city? Actually, there is nothing wrong with the tiger tally being taken away. Luo Shuiyan tried to comfort Shen Miao as she was afraid that Shen Miao would feel uneasy. He said, "Even without the tiger seal, we can still fight. Your father is still a general. We will be the same as before." Shen Miao's eyes hung down as Shen Exan and Shen Qiu looked at her worriedly. In the past, Shen Miao was somewhat arrogant and willful, but that was because she had the backing of the formidable great general. Once there was no backing, it was normal for this noble young lady to not be able to accept it. "Is it still going to war?" Shen Miao softly said. "Bring the frontline people to war and bring the cooks to war?" Luo Shuiyan and Shen Qiu were instantly stunned. These days they were used to Shen Miao's gentle and obedient manner, and when they suddenly heard such a sharp question, it was somewhat unbelievable. Shen Exan's face turned livid. The pride of a general was not to be trampled on by anyone. Emperor Wen Hui spared his life but gave him a deep humiliation which made him feel worse than killing Shen Exan. "Of course we can still fight without the tiger tally, but your majesty can always send another deputy general, assistant general, military officer and supervisor. When you give orders you have to look at other people's faces. When you mobilize the three armies you have to use other people's talismans. Isn't the title of general just an empty shell?" Shen Miao raised her head and her pair of eyes were incomparably clear, as if she was speaking the most ordinary household words. But who had seen such an overbearing Shen Miao before? Perhaps Shen Qiu had seen it before, but Shen Exan and Luo Shuiyan had never seen it before. Moreover, he was directly talking about the matters of the imperial court. Shen Exan clenched his fists but still comforted. "Jiao Jiao. Father will clear his name and the Shen family army will eventually return to father's hands. Jiao Jiao, your identity will not change." Shen Exan's entire life was based on his military achievements and he believed that in Mingqi, other than Xieding, no one could be as brave as him. A treasured sword was not afraid of being hidden too deeply. There would come a day when it would be unsheathed again. But how long do we have to wait? By that time, would the Shen family army who had already become the imperial army still be loyal to father? Even now, there are spies under father's command. In the future, who can guarantee that there won't be more? Hearing this, Luo Shuiyan's expression turned solemn as she asked, "Jiao Jiao, who told you these words?" Shen Miao was able to know that Shen Exan's tiger tally was taken away, and was also able to know that the Shen family's army was placed in the imperial army because these were things that everyone knew. But the matter of there being a traitor in the Shen family's army was something that was not heard from the outside. Those who were able to say such things to Shen Miao would at least have done some research on the matters of the imperial court. Luo Shuiyan was afraid that Shen Miao was being used by others. Shen Miao shook her head. "I am not a fool. I might not really not know about the things that others do not tell me." Shen Qiu said, "Younger sister is very smart." On the matter of Prince Yu, Shen Qiu could see Shen Miao's ability. He knew that Shen Miao's vision was not like that of an unmarried young female. She was exceptionally ruthless but could see it clearly. Chapter 407. It was rare for Shen Qiu to say such things, so Shen Exan frowned and asked Jiao Jiao, "What exactly do you want to say? Since the Shen family army is no longer ours, then there is no need for the Shen family army. How about giving up?" Shen Miao's words were shocking. "Jiao Jiao." Luo Shuiyan stopped her words and suddenly felt that her tone was too harsh and quickly softened. "The Shen family army was brought up by your father, and there are countless of subordinates. How is it easy to say to give up? It is because of the friendship of comrades on the battlefield. This impossible. Then what is father prepared to do?" Shen Miao asked back. "Continue to endure silently like this?" Enduring silently might be able to wait for a good opportunity, but if one were to be suppressed by others, at the end there would be nothing left. Shen Exan stared at Shen Miao, as if he had never known this daughter of his before. There was a thoughtful expression on his face as he asked, "What does Jiao Jiao think should be done?" "The east side is not bright but the west side is bright. Shen Miao's eyes were astonishingly bright. Father can lead the Shen family army well. Why not lead other armies well? Shen Exine was surprised for a moment before he laughed and caressed Shen Miao's head, as if Shen Miao's words made him much happier. He said, "Indeed, a young lady that has not grown up. In this world, how would there be so many soldiers for others to lead?" At the end, there was a faint sadness in his words. The Shen family army was like a child that Shen Exine had raised up, and now the pain of losing a child. How could words be used to describe it? Shen Miao smiled faintly. Then what about the Luo family? Shen Exine's smile abruptly stopped. Luo Shuiyan and Shan Qiu thought of something at the same time, and their eyes landed on Shan Miao. Shen Miao said unhurriedly, "In Weizu's hands, there is still a group of scattered soldiers. Even though it cannot be compared to the previous Shen family army, there are still a lot of them. If slowly trained, it may not be the next Shen family army?" Luo Shuiyan's maiden family. The Luo family was a family of generals, but it was a declining family of generals. It was true that there were soldiers under them, but after Shen Exine was stationed in the northwestern region, the Luo family's soldiers in the Shaochun city disarmed and returned to the fields. Even though they still had the name of soldiers, they took the rations and did not do anything. After so many years, they were no different from ordinary people. How can this be? The Shen family had been loyal to the monarch for so many years, and serving the monarch was an instinct. Shen Miao's words could even be said to be disgraceful. Keeping his own soldiers in a place unknown to the emperor. Luo Shuiyan said, "Jiao Jiao, this is not a joke." She did not know how to explain to Shan Miao how taboo the imperial family had towards the generals who held the army. Shen Miao was just a young lady, so how could she understand? It was Shen Qiu who spoke very little that opened his mouth. Younger sister wants to use the Luo family's army to replace the Shen family's army? It cannot be considered as a replacement. Shen Miao gently smiled. It is just that father is a general after all and cannot have no one by his side. Naturally there must be followers. Since that is the case, what is the difference between the Shen family's army and the Luo family's army? With the Luo family's army, wouldn't it be good to have one more chip to protect oneself? She described her rebellious words as self-protection, which at least made it sound less frightening. Luo Shuiyan felt that Shen Miao's words today were somewhat inconceivable, and when she looked up, she saw Shen Exine's tightly knitted brows, as if he was seriously thinking about Shen Miao's words, and felt a headache. Shen Exine looked at Shen Miao and deliberately guided Shen Miao's words. "What Jiao Jiao said sounds very good, but the Luo family's army is far away in the Shaochun city. How do we go over?" "That would have to depend on father's decision." Shen Miao smiled as she looked at him. "Perhaps father can try and explain to His Majesty to retreat to the northwestern region, and be willing to go to the Shaochun city to defend and set off today." Shen Exine and the three of them were stunned again. The Shaochun city was a small city at the northwestern border, and was thousands of mountains and rivers away from the Ding capital. If Shen Exine really made this request, anyone would think that it was because the tiger tally was taken away, and this formidable great general was disheartened that he would be stationed at the small border. As for the prestige of the formidable great general, it would be slowly drowned out by history. Shen Exine's tiger eyes stared. "This is retreat." "No. There would be talented people appearing in every generation, and it was good to hide one's capabilities and bide one's time. But Shen Exine was no longer a youthful youth. He was already past his 20s, and if he was not used and there was no suitable opportunity to return, even if the Luo family's group of people were trained, he could only stay at the border. It was probably the most tragic thing in the world to be a hero past his prime before his ambition was fulfilled. Talented people would be born in every generation, and it was good to keep a low profile, but Shen Exine was no longer a green youth. He was already past his 20s, and if he was not used, there would not be a suitable opportunity to return. Even if the Luo family's people were trained, they could only stay at the border. It was probably the most tragic thing in the world to be a hero past his prime before his ambition was fulfilled. Retreat in order to advance. There is a saying in the art of war. "Father, what are you afraid of?" Shen Miao did not give in at all. That pair of clear and indifferent eyes that were facing them, for the first time showed a provocative look. Afraid of being unable to recover after a setback, afraid of retreating again and again until there is no more retreat, or afraid that time is fleeting and it would be difficult to stand out? These few words made Shen Exine's heart tighten. Not only Shen Xian, Luo Shuiyin and Shen Qiu were also stunned. Shen Xian watched Shen Miao attentively, and he suddenly discovered that this delicate and soft-looking daughter seemed to have inherited the tenacity and arrogance in his bones. Moreover, Shen Miao chuckled. Within 2 years, His Majesty will definitely summon father back to the capital. The day we enter the capital is the day we flourish. Chapter 408. The lights in the western courtyard of the Shun residence were also brightly lit throughout the night. Shen Gui and Shan Wan wanted to inquire about it, but Shen Xian directly let his trusted aide guard the courtyard doors so that not even a mosquito could fly in. Trying to find out what was said was easier said than done. In the room, Shen Qiu poured a cup of tea for Shan Miao and said, "Younger sister, speak slowly. Regarding military matters, the Shen family had Shen Xian, Luo Shuiyin and Shen Qiu, but Shan Miao never seemed to have anything to do with these matters. A pampered young lady who was far away in the Ding capital, perhaps she did not even know the layout of the aristocratic families in the Ding capital. The matters of the military were treacherous and difficult to distinguish, and the forces involved were not as simple as it looked on the surface. Even officials could not differentiate clearly, much less Shan Miao. But when Shen Miao said it, she said it so logically that Shen Xian and wife could not help but raise their eyebrows. Abandon the Shen family's army and pick up the Luo family's army, Luo Shuiyin said. But the Shen family's army are all elites and the Luo family's army. Speaking of the troops that her father had led before, Luo Shuiyin was somewhat sad. How can it be compared to the Shen family's army? Although the Luo family army is scattered, it is important to be clean. Shen Miao said, there is already a traitor in father's Shen family army, and to bring such a troop to war, who knows if one would be stabbed in the back. As soon as he said this, the three of them fell silent. Everyone did not want to see a traitor among the soldiers who had been by their side through thick and thin, and who had single-handedly raised them up. Shen Xian said, I also thought about what Jiao Jiao said. Shen Qiu and Luo Shuiyin looked at Shen Xian at the same time. At this moment Shen Xian's suspicion from before faded away, and when he looked at Shan Miao, there was admiration in his eyes. If one is indecisive, one would definitely suffer from chaos. But what did you mean when you said in the carriage that you would summon me to the capital within 2 years? Correct. Shen Qiu also turned his head to look at Shan Miao. How did younger sister know that His Majesty would summon father back to the capital within 2 years? Who would be able to guess the emperor's thoughts? When Shen Miao said those words, it seemed to have some meaning. Luo Shuiyin suddenly became nervous. She was thinking about the long term, and the person who could understand the emperor's mind would definitely be someone around Emperor Wen Hui. Could it be Prince Ding? Prince Ding and Shen Miao's past matters had been exposed, and Luo Shuiyin's greatest worry was that Shen Miao would be dragged into the muddy waters of the fight for the throne between the princes and be used as a bargaining chip for no reason. Shen Miao's eyes hung down. Within 2 years, Emperor Wen Hui would naturally summon Shen Xian back to the capital. Because of the Ming Qi's tribute, there was the Qin country in the north and the Great Liang in the west. Thus the Ming Qi, which was caught in the middle, was in a precarious situation. At that time Emperor Wen Hui's health was not very good. The crown prince was bedridden, Prince Zhou and Prince Li fought till their heads were broken and bleeding, and Fu Xiuyi's hidden big net was gradually spread out. Shen Xian was a loyal general, and would definitely be used by Emperor Wen Hui to deter the enemy countries. Just like in the previous lifetime, even if the imperial family was still suppressing the Shen family's army at that time, they still left a line, and Shen Xian would be squeezed dry by the imperial family to the last drop of oil. It was just that these words could not be said to the outside. Shen Miao gently smiled as she faced the different gazes of the few people. I only had a very realistic dream. In the dream, within 2 years, father would make a comeback and the formidable great general's name would not be disgraced. These words were actually somewhat perfunctory, but Shan Miao said it gently, and her pair of eyes were so clear that even if one did not believe it, their heart would soften by half. Whether one could be recalled back to the capital within 2 years, this was something that no one could say clearly. But whether it was 1 year, 2 years, or 3 or 4 years, it was indeed the best way to retreat to the northwestern region at this moment. Not only was it to make a comeback, it was also because the fight for the throne was currently at an intense time. If the Shen family were to stay in the Ding capital, even if they did not have military power, they would still be implicated. It was this logic to retreat bravely in the face of a crisis. Before achieving success, one must first protect one's family. Chapter 409. This was what Shen Xian thought. He smiled as he looked at Shen Miao. Since Jiao Jiao said that it is a dream, then the dream will definitely come true. Father believes you. He did not intend to delve into the reason at all. The words "father believes you" almost made Shen Miao cry. In the beginning, she wanted to marry Fu Xiaoyi no matter what, and Shen Xian actually tried his best to stop her. It was only after she threatened to kill herself that Shen Xian finally relented. The proud general, who had been giving orders all his life, revealed a dejected and helpless expression. He said, "Since you have chosen him, I believe you." So he pushed the Shen family to a dead end. Shen Miao closed her eyes and the tragic past disappeared. She said, "If father really believed what I said, then tomorrow one will request His Majesty to retreat to the Shaochun city." Tomorrow? Luo Shuiyan was surprised. Why so urgent? It is precisely because you are in such a hurry that His Majesty will think that father was dissatisfied with having the tiger tally taken away and acted in a fit of pique. I won't think too much, Shen Miao explained. Shen Qiu still wanted to say something, but Shen Xian ordered, "Then do it." Shen Xian. Luo Shuiyan was somewhat anxious. After all, these were all important matters. Even though what Shen Miao said was somewhat reasonable, but to make such a hasty decision was too sloppy. Shen Xian shook his head. "You and I have been on the battlefield for many years, but we are not as clear as Jiao Jiao." He looked at Shen Miao and there was some complexity in his eyes. Finally he stretched out his hand and rubbed Shen Miao's head. "If Jiao Jiao is a male, how many people in the world can be compared?" Shen Miao looked at him quietly. What she said today was something that an unmarried girl would never be able to think of. What kind of person was Shen Xian? Even though he was a boorish person, it did not mean that he did not have a brain. One feared that he had long seen the suspicious points on her. It was just that Shen Xian did not expose it. Even if he did, Shen Miao would not tell Shen Xian the secret of his rebirth. Perhaps this was the unconditional trust between relatives. Just like how Shen Xian had always been on her side in her previous life. The Shen family will be fine. Shen Miao promised. Father will present the report in the morning court tomorrow. Shen Xian smiled and pulled Luo Shuiyan up. Foreign should also rest early. Luo Shuiyan wanted to say something, but when she saw Shen Xian's expression, she suddenly shut her mouth. She had followed Shen Xian for so many years and Shen Xian was naturally full of confidence. She had never seen such a heavy expression before. He was supposed to be a hero revered by the people, but he was going to be stripped of his military power and had to defend a small place at the border. No one was more aggrieved than Shen Xian at this moment. For the first time, her face softened as she supported Shen Xian. "All right?" It was Shen Qiu who was lagging behind and looked at Shen Miao wanting to speak but hesitating. Finally he could not help but said, "Younger sister, you want father to rebel?" Among the Shen family, Shen Qiu was the clearest about the hostility in Shen Miao's bones. Prince Yu of the first rank coveted her, so she did not leave a single person in Prince Yu residence alive. The Jing family schemed against her and now she ended up dying without a complete corpse. The emperor had taken away the Shen family's tiger tally and Shen Miao's seemingly retreating action. Was it really just to protect herself? Eating the monarch's salary, one must be loyal to the monarch. Shen Miao smiled lightly. The Shen family has always been loyal to the monarch and loved the country, so how would such a thing happen? Eldest brother better not think too much. If the walls have ears and were to be heard by others, one fear that you and I will be in trouble. Shen Qiu paused before saying, "That would be the best. Younger sister, do not do silly things." He then turned and walked out of the room. Shen Miao slowly sat down on her seat. She really wanted to rebel, but how to rebel without leaving behind a bad reputation was also a big matter. The most urgent matter was naturally to avoid disaster. But when she returned, she would definitely send a big gift to the Fu family. Chapter 410. One could only hope that the Fu family could swallow it. The matter of Shen Xian being stripped of his military power was lively for a day in the Ding capital, and on the second day, it was covered by new rumors. There were new things happening in Mingqi every day, and such a scene was not new. But on the second day, it was still Shen Xian's matter that was being discussed in the streets and alleys. It was said that on the second day after the formidable great general Shen Xian's military tally was taken away, he handed a memorial to Emperor Wen Hui in front of all the civil and military officials, proposing to bring the remaining frontline troops and the scattered Shen family guards to retreat to the Shaochun city. The once illustrious great general was going to defend a small place at the borders. Others felt that it was inconceivable, and Shen Xian himself felt even more aggrieved. To feel aggrieved but to take the initiative to submit a memorial, it was obvious that he was dissatisfied with Emperor Wen Hui's punishment and made the decision in a fit of pique. The storyteller in the restaurant explained the matter clearly and logically, saying that Emperor Wen Hui's expression changed on the spot in the throne room and threw the memorial at Shen Xian's face. One did not think that Shen Xian was still stubborn and stubbornly requested to retreat to the Shaochun city. Would the emperor tolerate one's pique? Even if one had great meritorious service, it would be useless. Did you not want to retreat to the small place at the borders? Good. Very good. Then you go and defend. Thus the entire Ding capital knew that the formidable great general would be leaving the capital for the Shaochun city tomorrow. Almost everyone in the restaurant was talking about the matter. Some people felt that Shen Xian did the right thing. The formidable great general had become a commander without an army, and would be aggrieved to stay in the Ding capital. It was better to go far away and avoid getting tired of it. Some people, however, felt that Shen Xian was held up too high, and did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. It was obvious that he had deceived the emperor first and was lucky to keep his life, but he still dared to throw his face at Emperor Wen Hui. If it was not for Emperor Wen Hui's benevolence, if it was another ruler, one feared that he would have given a heavier punishment. In Kuai Lu, Ji Yushu held his chin and looked at Gao Yang. What do you think this Shen Xian's intention is? To abandon the Shen family's army in the Ding capital? If that is the case, then one really have some boldness and is not a reckless martial artist. Gao Yang sighed. To retreat bravely in the face of a crisis, not everyone can do it. After drinking a mouthful of tea, Gao Yang then said to Xie Jingxing, who was silent at the side, "Why are you not speaking?" Xie Jingxing was interrupted and recovered to look at both of them. The Shen family moves too fast. Fast? Ji Yushu was somewhat puzzled. Xie Jingxing played with the teacup in his hand as a faint smile appeared on his lips. Pointing out a path to Shen Miao was to let the Shen family have a way out, but one did not expect that the Shen family's hands and feet would be so fast. He had just been stripped of his tiger tally yesterday, and today he went to the imperial court to ask for permission to withdraw. Shen Xian was a person who sought stability, and to be able to make Shen Xian make such a choice in such a short period of time, Shen Miao must have said something to him. Emperor Wen Hui let Shen Xian pack up and leave the capital. On the surface it was to embarrass Shen Xian, but he did not know that his thoughts were completely seen through by a little girl from the Shen family. If one knew about it, one did not know what kind of feeling one would have in one's heart. Xie Jingxing had a feeling that in this game of chess in Mingqi, Shen Miao would perhaps occupy a position that could lift something heavy as if it was light. It was just that, for him who was about to leave the capital, this did not have any meaning. "Yushu will leave the capital with me," he said. "Gao Yang, I will leave the rest to you." Ji Yushu touched his nose and showed some excitement. "All right. Third older brother Xia. The pastries that the chefs here make are just too unpalatable. It is still third older brother's chefs that are good. At least one do not need to starve." Gao Yang rolled his eyes at him and said coldly, "The entire Ding capital has been eaten by you. Since when do you starve?" Finishing, he changed into a serious look and said to Xie Jingxing, "Do not worry. Leave this to me." Chapter 411. Xie Jingxing nodded his head. The same news naturally spread to other places. The Shen family was a large family in the Ding capital, and there were many colleagues who had dealings with the Shen family. Just because of Shen Xian's prestige, there were many officials who wanted to curry favor with him. But when the wall is down, everyone pushes it, and when the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. When the person leaves, the tea cools. This time Shenxian was obviously demoted and left the capital. When he went to the crowded Shen family's residence, other than a few families who were on good terms with Shenxian, there was no one else. Shen Miao made a trip to Guangwentang. To leave the Ding capital, naturally she could not go to Guangwentang. Some time ago, because of Shen Miao's change in temperament, the students in Guangwentang were somewhat afraid of her. But seeing that the Shen family's military power was confiscated, there were unscrupulous faces that ridiculed her. It was just that Shen Miao did not even turn her head as she walked over, as if she did not hear anything, which made those noble children feel bored. When Feng and Ning saw her, she cried and grabbed her sleeves. What to do? Shen Miao, when will you return after this trip? Shen Miao was somewhat at a loss with Feng and Ning's tears. In all fairness, in the previous lifetime, because of her stupidity, the noble females in the Ding capital were not willing to be associated with her. In this lifetime she had a cold heart and did not deliberately try to attract anyone's liking. This Feng and Ning accidentally became one of her friends. Even though her temperament was a little arrogant, she did not have any bad intentions. Sometimes looking at her age, Shen Miao would think of Wan Yu. She comforted. He will return not long later. Liar. Feng and Ning sobbed. I heard from father that this time General Shen had angered His Majesty. Now that His Majesty is angry, how could he return so quickly? Shen Miao, you have to write to me. By the time you return, will I be married? Shen Miao almost laughed out, but when she saw Feng and Ning's red eyes, she could not laugh anymore. She was clearer than anyone else about the Feng family's ending and Feng and Ning's ending. Even though the Feng family would not fall after 2 years, but she patted Feng and Ning's shoulders. It is all right. I will be able to see the day you marry. Feng and Ning still wanted to say something but saw Pei Lang walking in with a book. Pei Lang was dressed in green as he stood on the stage. His gaze landed on Shen Miao and paused for a moment before saying, Shen Miao, come with me. If Shen Miao were to leave Guangwentang, it was only right for her to bid farewell to Pei Lang. Everyone did not feel that there was anything wrong. Feng and Ning unwillingly released Shen Miao's sleeves and allowed Shen Miao to follow Pei Lang out of the academy. Pei Lang brought Shen Miao to the triangular courtyard of Guangwentang. The teachers of Guangwentang all lived in the residences in the academy, and this was Pei Lang's own residence, so no one else could enter. He pushed the door and walked into the nearest study. Shen Miao followed in and closed the door at the right time. You're leaving? This time, Pei Lang didn't beat around the bush as usual and asked directly. Shen Miao nodded. Pei Lang's expression changed and he hesitated for a moment before saying, Lu Ying's matter? Young lady Lu Ying has already been settled. Shen Miao interrupted his words. She is living very well in the embroidery shop. Her double-sided embroidery is outstanding, and in the future it would be good to rely on her skills to make a living as an embroidery mother. Perhaps she would be able to take in a few disciples. Pei Lang's expression gradually relaxed. Shenxian's entire family was about to leave the capital, and he was afraid that Lu Ying's matter had not been settled. He had relaxed but saw Shen Miao staring at his eyes. Then how is the matter that teacher Pei has considered? Pei Lang was startled. The matter that Shen Miao was talking about was naturally the matter of him being a spy by Fu Xiuyi's side. That day at Kuai Hualu, Pei Lang had already expressed his attitude, but as to how to proceed, he needed to think further. Hearing that, Pei Lang frowned. What do you want to say? Chapter 412. 2 years. Shen Miao said, within 2 years, I must return to the capital. At that time teacher Pei must become His Highness Prince Ding's aide, and the most dependable one. Pei Lang smiled, but there was some anger in his smile. Shen Miao, aren't you overestimating me? I am just a poor scholar and do not have anything. Even if I managed to sneak into His Highness Prince Ding's side, how would I be able to obtain the most dependable reputation? Teacher need not belittle yourself. Teacher is a 1,000-li horse and naturally there will be Bo Lu who appreciates you. Shen Miao smiled gently. If one is not a 1,000-li horse, one must see oneself as a 1,000-li horse in order to let Bo Lu appreciate. She lowered her voice and looked at Pei Lang provocatively. If teacher cannot do it, you guess how about I tell the story of Prefectural Magistrate Pei's residence to young lady Lu Ying and say that the person who made me do all these was teacher? Does teacher think that young lady Lu Ying would be moved to tears? You. Pei Lang was flustered. Shun Miao's words were clearly a threat, threatening that if he could not be Fu Xiuyi's left and right arm, then she would tell Lu Ying about these things. Lu Ying already had resentment towards the matter of that year, and if she was told that he was the one who arranged it, Lu Ying might return to Baoxianglu in a fit of anger. Pei Lang said, I have never seen such a vicious and cunning female like you. The young female in front of him did not have any difference in age and would not respect him as a teacher. Pei Lang even had an illusion that Shun Miao was always suppressing him. Her provocations and threats seemed to contain some kind of inexplicable resentment, making Pei Lang somewhat embarrassed. Who would have thought that the seemingly gentle and delicate young female would have a heart that was even more terrifying and cold than the matrons in the house? Teacher must be joking. The ways of the world are difficult and one is only struggling to survive. Shun Miao smiled modestly, as if she was a disciple who was being admonished by a teacher. Her hands quietly took out an item from her sleeves and reached into Pei Lang's sleeves to hand it over to him. Pei Lang was startled for a moment as the soft fingertips rested on his wrist, but after a slight touch, it moved away as if it was a butterfly spreading its wings to fly. For some strange reason, Pei Lang actually had an impulse to keep her, but it was only for a moment before he sobered up and pinched the letter-like thing in his sleeves as he looked at Shun Miao in puzzlement. If teacher is free, naturally you can take a peek at the embroidery manor where young lady Lu Ying is at. In addition, there are some other matters that the top hope teacher will follow in to do. Shun Miao said. Pei Lang's body stiffened and instead of being angry, he laughed. Shun Miao, you want me to be your puppet? A scholar has the pride of a scholar. Sir, you are so knowledgeable and have such a lofty and unyielding character. I admire you very much. If it were any other scholar, I would definitely not use such methods. Shun Miao raised her head and looked at Pei Lang's somewhat angry expression, but her lips raised. But does teacher still have a choice? It is all right if teacher is not willing to do it. Even if separated by 1,000 mountains and 10,000 rivers, I naturally have ways to tell stories to young lady Lu Ying. She smiled gently, but her tone was sharp. Pei Lang felt an indescribable anger burning in his heart, and he felt inexplicably aggrieved. In front of Shun Miao, he did not have any dignity as a teacher. Every time he felt that he wanted to get angry, but when he saw Shun Miao's complacent look, he could not get angry. Pei Lang even thought that in the previous lifetime he owed Shun Miao something, and in this lifetime Shun Miao came to collect the debt? He suppressed the humiliation in his heart and said, Can one meet your requirements by doing according to the top's instructions? I believe in teacher's ability. Shun Miao looked down. On that letter, it was the things that Fu Xiuyi would do in the next few years. Fu Xiuyi looked like he did not have any ambition on the surface, but he was secretly recruiting knowledgeable people. As for what kind of means to recruit and unearth intelligent people, no one was clearer than Shun Miao. Pei Lang was not an ordinary person, and as long as he revealed a little bit of his talent, naturally Fu Xiuyi would pick him. Chapter 413. And to get Fu Xiuyi's attention, one needed to plan step by step. In the entire letter, Shun Miao did not mention what she wanted Pei Lang to do, and only told Pei Lang about the opportunity to get close to Fu Xiuyi. How to get Fu Xiuyi's trust would depend on what Pei Lang did. This was also the greatest trust that Shun Miao could give to Pei Lang. In the previous lifetime, Fu Xiuyi and Pei Lang were on the same boat, and now she was the first to discover this horse and even left a mark on it. She also let Fu Xiuyi have a taste of being betrayed by a close person. She swept a glance at Pei Lang and her heart suddenly felt somewhat apprehensive. The matter that was instructed was done, and she did not want to speak more with Pei Lang before turning around to leave. Shun Miao. It was Pei Lang who called out to her. He hesitated for a moment before finally spitting out two words, "Take care." Shun Miao was somewhat surprised but only lightly said, "Many thanks," before leaving. Only Pei Lang was left standing at the same spot, and his eyes were somewhat complicated as he stared at Shun Miao's back. When Shun Miao left Pei Lang's courtyard, she saw a soft white dumpling standing in the garden outside the academy. When he saw her, his eyes lit up as he ran over and cried out in surprise, "Older Shun's sister." Su Ming Lang rolled over like a dumpling. Shun Miao. In fact, Su Ming Lang was already over 10 years old this year. But one did not know if it was because the Su family had raised him too well that he was different from Su Mingfeng's mature older brother. Su Minglang looked more childish than a 5 or 6-year-old child. He ran a few steps before panting. Shun Miao walked in front of him and held his plump arms. What is the matter? Older Shun sister, you are leaving? Su Minglang puffed and puffed for a while. Can I obediently wait here for you to return? Shun Miao was stunned for a moment. When everyone here knew that Shen Xian was going to the Shaochun city, the first thing they said was, when will you return or will you not return? Everyone felt that once Shen Xian left, perhaps he would stay in the Shaochun city forever. Su Minglang's first sentence was to wait for her return, as if he was certain that Shun Miao would definitely return to the Ding capital. Shun Miao found it interesting and tapped his forehead before deliberately teasing him. Who said that I will definitely return? Perhaps I will not return. Will not. Su Minglang raised his head and vowed, older sister will definitely come back. Shun Miao tilted her head and looked at him. When Su Minglang said those words, his eyes were firm and there was no trace of doubt. She asked, why are you so sure? Older brother Xie said that in less than 2 years, you will definitely come back. Su Minglang said excitedly, Brother Xie? Shun Miao's mind turned. Xie Jingxing? Even though father and eldest brother felt that after eldest sister's family left, they did not know when they would return. Father also said that General Shun had angered His Majesty this time, and one feared that His Majesty would not recall General Shun in this lifetime. Su Minglang's childish words carried no harm, and did not pay attention to whether his words would hurt Shun Miao or not. He only cared about himself and said, but when older brother Xie came to see eldest brother, he told eldest brother that General Shen would definitely return to the capital within 2 years. Xie Jingxing could actually guess her thoughts so accurately? Shun Miao's heart was somewhat frightened. Even though older brother Xie is a bad person and bullied me, bullied my eldest brother and bullied my father, but the words that he said were all true. This was the first time Su Minglang spoke so quickly, as if he was trying to prove something as he continued. He said that you will come back. Then you will definitely come back? Older sister Shun, you will come back, right? As he spoke, his eyes were filled with hope. Shun Miao suddenly thought of Fu Ming and her heart softened as she smiled. What he said is right. I will come back. That is great. Su Minglang jumped up and said word by word with his short fingers. Then I will wait here for older sister to come back. When older sister comes back, I will treat older sister to candied haws, small dough figurines, steamed sugar cakes. Shun Miao could not help but laugh again. When she was together with Su Minglang, it seemed that some of the hazy emotions would be swept away in an instant. It was as if time had become carefree. She said, you just listen to your father's words. It is just that. Regarding the matter of me coming back, the words that you said to me today must not be said to other people. If other people were to hear these words, they would parrot the crowd, and when it was passed to Emperor Wen Hui's ears, he might be able to detect some clues. It was fine if there was only one person in this world who knew the thoughts in her heart, but if there were too many people who knew, it would not be good. Su Minglang saw Shun Miao's solemn expression and immediately said obediently, understood. I only told older sister and will not tell others. He then whispered to Shun Miao, older sister Shun, but you cannot tell this to older brother Xie. It was me who eavesdropped. If older brother Xie knew that I eavesdropped, he would beat me up again. In the eyes of the second young master of the Su family, the elegant and noble little marquis of the Xie family was an out-and-out black-hearted bandit. Shun Miao said, all right, I will not say. Chapter 4:14. Shen Xian's household started to pack their luggage overnight, and the most amazing thing was that before they left, they forced old Shen Foren to separate from the family in front of the Shen family. That day when Shen Xian and wife were summoned to the palace, Shun Miao's dispute with old Shen Foren at the residence's doors eventually fell into Shen Xian's ears, and naturally Shen Xian was unable to restrain his anger. The timing to throw stones at a person when they were down was too good that he did not even bother to maintain his face. Luo Shuiyan was even angrier at herself for being blind and treating this family of hoodlums with sincerity. Even though Shen Xian's military power was taken away, he was still a courageous person. When he was really stubborn, even 9 bulls would not be able to pull him back. The clan head would not be able to rush over, but the clansmen would still be there. Before old General Shen left, he hoped that this family would live in harmony, but at the end it still fell apart. Old Shen Foreign brought out the skills that she had when she was a songstress in the marketplace and occupied more than half of old General Shan's residence and fields. Shen Miao did not stop this at all. After so many years, because it was not managed well, those shops and fields were not as pleasing as before, and it would be a burden to keep them by one's side. Moreover, they were about to go to the Shaochun city and these things were useless. Shen Xian was not lacking in money as the emperor had bestowed a lot of rewards every year. Old Shen Foreign originally thought that in the public accounts books, the whereabouts of Shen Xian's money had already been cleared clean, but did not know that at the last moment, Shen Miao actually found another account book from who knows where. It clearly stated the money that Shen Xian had handed over to the government all these years, as well as the money that Shen Xian had supplemented himself. In front of the clansmen, these could not be denied, and no matter what, old Shen Foreign had to spit out some. Shen Miao's thoughts were simple: no matter how much she could get back, even if Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan did not even bother to look at these worldly possessions, it was good to disgust old Shen Foreign. Old Shen Foreign was really disgusted, to the point of falling sick, and Chan Roqiu was very angry in her heart. Now that Ren Wanyuan did not care about the matter and she was the one managing the household, there was not enough money, and Shen Xian even took back a portion of it. In the future, if things were not going well, one feared that old Shen Foreign would take it out on her. Shen Yu was also angered. These days she could only watch helplessly as Chan Roqiu was overwrought over the matter of money. Shen Yu's high and proud character that was previously raised had also changed. Originally she did not put money in her eyes, but now she felt that she wanted to fight for it. It was not good to say anything in front of the clansmen, so he looked at Shan Miao and pretended to be worried. One do not know when fifth younger sister will return from this trip. One heard that the Shaochun city is lacking in supplies and it would be bad if the food is not good in the future. It is better to bring more money over. These words were faintly discernible ridicule of Shan Miao going to a bitter and cold place. Luo Shuiyan was about to get angry, but she saw Shan Miao lightly smiling. Correct, but the prices in the Ding capital are very high. In the future, without His Majesty's bestowment, second older sister must not spend as extravagantly as before. Her eyes landed on Shen Yu's wrist and smiled. After all, in the future, father will not give you a bracelet. Shen Yu was surprised for a moment and looked at the bracelet on her wrist before her face flushed red. That bracelet was none other than one of the bestowments that Shen Xian received. Originally Shen Xian's bestowments were confiscated, and Shen Yu would pick some good-looking jewelry from it. Who knew that when she said those words, Shen Miao would directly say that the bracelet that she was wearing was Shen Xian's. Was this not slapping her face in public? But this bracelet was extremely precious, and Shen Yu was not willing to take it off and return it to her. Shen Miao seemed to see her thoughts and smiled gently. Older sister must not return this bracelet. There is no logic in taking back something that is given out. One do not know if there will be such a good bracelet in the future. Chapter 4:15. At this moment, even Shen Wan, who was standing at the side without saying anything, had an ugly expression on his face. The meaning of Shen Miao's words was that it was impossible for Shen Wan to obtain such a good reward based on his own ability. Shen Wan would never be able to reach Shen Xian's level in his entire life. He pulled down his face and looked coldly at Shen Miao before saying to Chan Roqiu and Shen Yu, "Go back." He did not look at Shen Miao again before leaving. Since Shen Xian had already left the capital and his military power had been confiscated, there was no longer a need to put on an act of pretending to be brothers. Shen Wan would never look at those who did not have any value. Shen Gui also cupped his hands towards Shen Xian with some pride and said, "Eldest brother, this younger brother will withdraw first." The figure that brushed his sleeves and left seemed to have some arrogance. When Wan Yinyang saw this, she quickly pulled Shen Dongling and followed up. She had been acting like a little girl for decades and did not change because of the changes in Kai Yun Yuan. Shen Gui was a person who could not keep his cool, and in his career, he relied on flattery to climb up. In terms of talent, he could not compare to his son Shen Yuan, and in terms of temperament, he was not as tenacious as Shen Wan. He was also heartless, and as long as he obtained a bit of sweetness, He would forget the bitterness he had suffered and was nothing to be feared. Xunqiu was so angry that he said, "What kind of people are they?" Xun Miao gently smiled but did not answer. Not to mention Shun Wan and Chan Qiu, but for Shun Gui's branch within 2 years, Shun Yuanbo would die from smallpox. Shun Gui had already been drugged by Ren Wan Yun and would not be able to have any more children in this lifetime. So what if he had money, power, and beauties? He didn't even have anyone to inherit his family business. There were 3 ways to be unfilial, and having no descendants was the worst. At that time, old Shin Foreign would only urge her 2 sons to quickly spread the branches and leaves. Did Chan Qiu think that she would be able to sit back and relax? Evil people will be tortured by evil people. Leave this mess to the Shun family and let them clean it up themselves. When the matter of Shen Xian retreating to the Shaochun city reached Prince Ding, Fu Xiuyi's ears, Emperor Wen Hui had already approved it. At this time, Fu Xiuyi naturally could not say anything else. The more he said, the more suspicious it would be. It was just that Shen Xian's sudden appearance made him feel strange. He could see clearly that after so many years, even though Shen Xian was a martial artist on the surface, he was not an impulsive person. Even if he was indignant that his tiger tally had been taken away, he would not have hurriedly submitted a memorial and left the capital the next day. Involuntarily, Fu Xiuyi remembered what Shen Yuan had reminded him before. "Your Highness, don't underestimate my 5th sister." But at that time, Fu Xiuyi did not take this sentence to heart. But now, for some reason, it resurfaced in his mind again. For Shen Xian to suddenly make this decision, could it be that Shen Miao was adding fuel to the fire? But how would a pampered young lady of the Ding capital take the initiative to go to such a cold place like the northwestern region? Fu Xiuyi sensed that something was wrong, but he could not tell what was wrong. He only felt that things should not develop like this. The advisor beside him asked, "Your Highness, are you worried about the formidable general?" Even though there was a change in the situation, but the Shen family's army had already dispersed and the tiger tally was taken back, so the formidable great general's role was not much. "Your Highness can rest assured and show off your skills." Fu Xiuyi recollected his thoughts and lightly responded. Even though Shen Xian had deviated from his plans, he was after all not an important chess piece. If it was an important chess piece, in the beginning when Shen Miao was in love with him, he could be used. But one did not know what happened afterwards, and that little bit of love dissipated, making him lose the opportunity to pull the Shen family onto his boat. But it was considered as a sigh of relief. If he really married Shen Miao, even if he had the Shen family's military strength, he would still be ridiculed by everyone. Fu Xiuyi was extremely proud in his bones, so how would he allow himself to have such a stain? Now those hypotheses were scattered along with Shen Xian's family leaving the capital. He said, "Go and recruit more people these days." Chapter 416. The advisor was stunned for a moment before cupping his hands in acknowledgement. Fu Xiuyi shifted his gaze. Since the game had already begun, the day of conquering the world was just around the corner. It was imperative to recruit more talents in the shortest time possible. Shen Xian left the capital early the next morning. When he left the capital, it was early in the morning and the sky was not even bright. Shen Xian had sneaked away. One reason was that he did not want to make things difficult for those colleagues that he had good relations with. If they were to send him off, it would be equivalent to going against Emperor Wen Hui. The heart of an emperor was temperamental. It would not be good if he vented his anger because of this. Secondly, the Shaochun city was thousands of mountains and rivers away from the Ding capital. Thus the earlier one traveled, the earlier one would arrive. However, even if they galloped at full speed, it would still take them more than half a year to arrive. Even though Shen Xian was taken in by the Shen family's army, and only the frontline people were left, he still had a group of confidants in private. In addition to Shen Qiu's subordinates, Mo Qing and Qi, he was not afraid of encountering any danger. Their journey had been pretty good. Luo Shuiyan and Shen Xian were initially worried that Shen Miao's body would not be able to withstand such a long journey, and feared that she would feel uncomfortable in the middle of the journey. Who knew that Shen Miao did not even utter a single word of tiredness? Even Shen Xian kept on praising, "Jiao Jiao is indeed my daughter." Which female family in the Ding capital would have such tenacity? Luo Shuiyan rolled her eyes at him but felt even more guilty towards Shan Miao. She was a pampered girl, but she had to follow them and suffer hardships. Jingzhe was holding on to the curtain of the carriage. Because it was her first time traveling far, she was somewhat surprised. One moment she pointed at the birds in the sky. The next moment she pointed at the hares in the forest and screamed. Seeing Shen Miao's calm look, she asked curiously, "Why does young lady not find it fresh? These things can't be found in the city." With that said, Guyu also knocked on Shen Miao's face and probed. "Young lady, look at it, and there is not a bit of nostalgia." Luo Shuiyan, who was sitting in the carriage, was stunned. To leave the hometown that one had lived in for more than 10 years and go to a place that one had never heard of. The Shaochun city was definitely not as prosperous as the Ding capital, and one was unfamiliar with the people and the place. Any young lady would at this time show their attachment and reluctance to leave their hometown. However, Shen Miao was very calm from the beginning to the end. Sometimes she even looked a little lively. Brisk? What was there to be happy about leaving one's home? Feeling Luo Shuiyan's gaze, Shen Miao was slightly surprised for a moment before smiling. Looking at the scenery outside the carriage, she said, "Father, mother and eldest brother are by my side. What is there to miss? Even if one were to stay in the Ding capital, one would not have any relatives and it would not be considered as a home?" Hearing this, Luo Shuiyan's heart ached, thinking that she had seen the ugly faces of the Shen family when she came back this time. For so many years she had thrown Shen Miao into that family and thought that she was living well, but now it seemed like a big joke. Shen Miao most likely did not treat those people as family, otherwise she would not have said such words. Thinking of this, Luo Shuiyan pulled Shen Miao into her embrace and said guiltily, "Correct. In the future Jiao Jiao will be together with father, mother and eldest brother. No one would dare to bully you." Shen Miao nestled in Luo Shuiyan's embrace and lowered her eyes to hide the trace of coldness in them. How could this be the first time he had to leave his hometown and travel alone? In her previous life, when she went to the Qin state as a hostage, the mountains were high and the rivers were long. When she brought along her trusted maids, how many of them died in foreign lands? The scenery at that time was just like now. It was obviously very blurry, but one could clearly remember the feeling of that moment. From the Ding capital to the Qin country and from the Qin country back to the Ding capital, both roads were very bleak. It was a pity that she thought that she was doing it for the sake of righteousness and for the common people of the world, but did not know how ridiculous and lame she was in the eyes of everyone.